The story begins with a meteorite heading straight for Earth. A family watching the news isn't worried because the mother, Maureen, used her job at the space agency to get them on a list to escape. On the night of the disaster, they boarded a spaceship to find a new planet for humans to live on. One day, while playing poker, their ship was hit by debris from a giant warship. The crash knocked them off course. The ship shook violently, and all the family could do was hold on to each other and hope they would be okay. They landed safely, but their relief didn't last long. A heavy metal box came loose and crushed Maureen's leg. The father, John, opened the top hatch, and their youngest son, Will, climbed out. But when their little daughter tried to get out, she was too big for the opening. Will jumped from the ship to a higher ledge and saw that the whole planet was covered in snow and ice. John and the others helped the injured Maureen out of a different hatch. Just then, they heard the sound of ice cracking. Water rushed in, and their spaceship, with all their supplies, sank into the freezing water. Their first priority was to treat Maureen's leg, but all the medical supplies were on the sunken ship. Then Maureen did something that surprised everyone. She took off her helmet. John yelled at her to stop because they didn't know if the air was safe to breathe. But John had already found out by accident. His pants were torn, and he realized the planet had enough oxygen for them to survive. The rest of the family took off their helmets and breathed in the cold, fresh air. Soon, they faced another big problem. The sun would set in 6 hours, and the temperature would drop to a deadly -51 degrees Celsius. Their spacesuits had heaters, but the batteries would only last for 5 hours. Without a way to recharge, they would freeze to death. John came up with a plan: dive into the sunken ship and get the spare batteries. Since his own suit was damaged and Maureen's leg was broken, he turned to his son, Will, who was the only one small enough to fit through the top hatch. But Will was too scared and just stood there shivering. Seeing her brother was terrified, his older sister Judy jumped into the water. John tried to call her back on the intercom, but she was taking a longer route through another hatch. The water was getting colder and would soon freeze over. Luckily, Judy found the batteries, but as she started to swim back, she realized the water in the ship was already starting to freeze. Judy swam as fast as she could, but the heavy batteries slowed her down. The ice on the surface was now forming quickly. Judy dropped the batteries and swam with all her might, but it was too late. She was trapped in the ice. Judy struggled in the freezing water as the ice grew thicker around her. On the shore, her father screamed for her to leave the batteries and swim faster, but she was already stuck. The family felt completely helpless. Thankfully, the spacesuits were still providing her with oxygen and heat. While comforting her daughter, Maureen used a computer and saw that Judy's battery had less than 5 hours left. They had to get her out before it died. The look on Maureen's face also showed that her own leg injury was very serious. John frantically pulled out a knife and started chipping at the ice, but it was an impossible task with such a small tool. After trying for a long time, he had only made a small hole. Just then, a bright light shone from a glacier in the distance. Will, who was a smart student, guessed that the light might be from magnesium. He explained that magnesium burns with a lot of heat and ice could make it burn even hotter. This gave John a spark of hope. After telling his daughter he would save her, he and his son left to find the magnesium. They walked across the glacier and found enough magnesium to rescue Judy. John carefully collected it, trying not to create any sparks that could be dangerous. But then Will fell through a hole in the ice. He wasn't hurt and found a way out that led to a forest. Will called his father and told him to go back and save his sister, saying he was safe. John trusted him and went back to help Judy, not knowing that Will was only pretending to be brave. All alone, Will sat down on the ground. Suddenly, he saw sparks floating in the air. He tried to call his father, but he was too far away. Will followed the sparks through the forest and found the wreckage of another spaceship, clearly alien. He took out a small camera to record this historic moment, the first proof of aliens. As he moved closer, he heard a noise behind him and turned to see an alien coming toward him. Terrified, Will ran and climbed a large tree. The alien followed, but it was only the lower half of its body and couldn't climb. As Will moved back, a large claw appeared behind him. The alien's upper body was stuck on a broken branch and couldn't reach him. Back at the lake, John spread magnesium on the ice and lit it with a torch. After burning for a while, it melted a large hole. The family worked together to clear the water, and Judy's hand finally appeared. Then Penny noticed the wind was about to blow out the torch. Lightning flashed, thunder roared, and rain poured down. The cold rain froze the hole again, put out the torch, and their lighter was too wet to work. Judy's spacesuit was almost out of power. Back in the forest, night fell while Will and the alien remained trapped. A butterfly-like creature landed on Will, then on the alien's finger. When it did, the light on the alien's face dimmed. Being separated for too long was causing its body to shut down. At the same time, fire from the crashed ship spread through the forest. Flames reached Will's feet. He tried to climb higher but couldn't and had no signal to call his father. Seeing the alien struggling, Will made a brave choice. He pulled out a wire saw, cut the branch, and freed studied the alien's upper body. Will leaned against the tree, waiting for the fire. Suddenly, the alien walked out of the flames, climbed the tree, grabbed Will, and leapt away. They landed on a mountaintop. The alien looked at Will and changed its shape to resemble a human. Back at the ice, John and the others were desperate as Judy's suit was about to die. In the final moments, Will and the alien returned. Will asked for help, and the alien fired a red light that instantly melted the ice and lifted Judy out. Will asked for one more favor, and the alien became a small sun, keeping the family warm through the night. The scene shifts to astronaut Don, who wakes up and sees his pet chicken alive. His relief fades when he looks down into a massive canyon. Their ship is lodged on a cliff edge, the cockpit close to breaking off. Earlier, a meteor destroyed Earth, forcing humans to flee into space. During the journey, a black hole tore part of the main ship apart and dragged their smaller ship back, stranding them on this planet. Since the chicken survived, the air was breathable. Don removed his helmet but couldn't unbuckle his seatbelt because it was jammed with sand. He dropped his knife when the ship shook. His companion June woke up as the ship began to crack. She threw the knife to Don. He cut wires, used leaking oil to loosen the belt, freed himself, and rescued June. Outside, they found a flare gun and a dead crew member. They took the shoes for June because the sand was sharp. They fired a flare but saw no response. Then Don spotted a red parachute in the distance. They packed their gear, took the chicken, and moved toward it. Soon, they found a woman named Angela lying on the ground. When she coughed, it startled Don. A massive storm approached, forcing them to leave. Don initially refused to carry Angela, but then changed his mind. As the wind grew stronger, they took shelter in a nearby cave. June realized she had lost her necklace. Don went back into the storm to find it. When he returned, June said someone had to go for help. She left, telling Don he would know when to use the last flare so she could find her way back. What Don didn't know was that June had already taken the last flare with her. Back with Morin's family the next morning, they gathered around the alien. When Morin reached out to touch it, the machine suddenly activated. It moved straight to their frozen spaceship, melted the ice with its heat, and entered the cockpit. That's when John noticed a clean cut on Will's sleeve and asked how it happened. Will hesitated and said it probably happened when he fell inside the ship. The alien activated a drying mode, and the water inside the cockpit slowly drained away. John focused on repairing the ship while the alien dried the area around him. Still cautious, John approached it carefully, unsure if it was safe. Despite his doubts, the family soon moved back into the spaceship. After days of work, they even built a robotic brace for Morin's leg. It worked so well that her injury was barely noticeable. While Penny was outside fixing a water pipe, she heard an explosion in the distance. When she told the others, the family, along with Will and the alien, went to investigate. They found only wreckage. They left piles of stones as markers in case other survivors came through. When Morin used a communicator to scan for signals, a strange noise came through. Will realized it was coming from the alien's crashed ship. Curious, the family set out to find it. Back at their ship, the water pump clogged again. As Penny worked on it, she noticed a massive storm approaching. Trouble seemed to follow her every time she stepped outside. She tried calling her parents, but couldn't reach them. Penny suggested using a vehicle to rescue them, but Judy said it was buried under thick ice and told her not to worry, insisting their parents could handle themselves. With the ship frozen, Penny came up with a desperate plan. She started the ship's engines to blast the ice away. In the garage, Judy mocked her, saying Penny couldn't drive because she didn't even have a license. When Penny pulled the cover off the vehicle, she saw the tires weren't attached. She quickly assembled it. Judy, frozen by fear from something in her past, curled up in a corner. With no other choice, Penny prepared to go alone. She climbed in, placed cookies beside her, buckled up, and drove off. Judy ran outside when she heard the noise, just in time to see the vehicle speed away. Penny raced across the snow, enjoying herself until she slammed the brakes at the edge of a cliff. She tried calling her parents, but got no answer. She took a bite of a cookie, switched the vehicle to snow mode, activated the map, and treated it like a game as she continued. Led by the alien, the parents reached the alien's crashed ship. Even it seemed surprised by the damage. Inside, they explored with flashlights and found a large ring-shaped structure in the center. Outside, Will played catch with the alien. Watching them, John looked uneasy. When the ball rolled away, the alien lifted heavy debris to help Will retrieve it. Suddenly, the alien's face glowed red and the ship powered on. A hologram appeared, showing a planet, then zooming out to reveal a galaxy that wasn't the Milky Way. They were in a different galaxy. By touching the debris, Will saw the alien's memories and learned its main ship had been attacked, stranding it here. Frightened, Will ran. The alien followed, looking sad and lowering its head. Will tested it, telling it to raise one hand, then the other. When he told it to walk toward a cliff, it obeyed without hesitation. Just before it stepped off, Will stopped it and called it back. The alien knelt and Will accepted it again, realizing he could trust it. When the parents exited the ship, they hurried back toward their own as the storm arrived. Diamonds began falling from the sky, smashing into trees. One sliced John's arm as they hid behind a large rock. At that moment, they heard Penny's voice over the communicator. The alien transformed into a bright beacon to guide her. Penny arrived and they escaped together in the vehicle, the alien clinging to the back. From a nearby cave, Don spotted the vehicle through binoculars. He reached for the flare gun but found the box empty and realized June had stolen it. The family saw a flare in the distance and drove toward it, finding only June. She claimed she was alone. With the storm closing in, they escaped and returned safely to their ship. Back in the cave, Don held his chicken, his last hope for food. Later, Will woke from a nightmare and went to the ship's main hall. June sat there quietly. When Will opened the fridge, she asked if he'd had a bad dream and admitted she still had nightmares too. The alien entered the room. Will apologized and turned to leave, but June stopped him and warned she had seen aliens like this before, on the main ship in combat mode, hurting people. As Will walked past the alien, the ship shook and the ice above them started to crack. The family ran to the main hall. They knew they had to leave before the glacier collapsed. Morin gave everyone a job to do, but John had bad news. The engine wasn't working. The storm had blocked the air vents with sand, and they couldn't leave until they were cleared. Morin went back to the hall to give out new jobs, while John went to clear the sludge near the fuel tank. The others started cleaning other parts blocked by the storm. As John finished, he saw something moving in the water behind him. Meanwhile, Morin found out that someone had used the 3D printer to make a weapon, but no one knew who did it. While Morin was cleaning, an alarm went off. She ran to the cockpit and saw that the fuel tank was slowly draining. They were running out of time. John rushed to check it out while Morin went to the engine room to clear the blockages. June then suggested they all just get in the vehicle and leave. Morin said no, explaining that while one or two of them might survive for a little while, it wouldn't work for the whole family. June then pretended she needed to get something and snuck away to a storage room, where she started stuffing a bag with supplies to escape by herself. At that moment, the alien, who was helping clean, suddenly turned and walked away. Will followed it. The alien stopped under a pipe where strange noises were coming from. When Will tried to talk to it, the alien ignored him. Suddenly, two eel-like creatures dropped down, and the alien quickly protected Will with its strong body. To keep Will safe, the alien pushed him into the storage room, locking him inside with the deceitful June. Elsewhere, while John was checking the water near the fuel tank, something suddenly pulled him under. Later, when Will yelled for help, Penny and her mother ran over but only found the alien, who warned them that Will was in danger from a creature on the ship. Morin went to the main hall and learned her husband was in the basement. In the middle of the chaos, John came back and threw an eel-like creature on the floor, warning them not to go downstairs. Morin put its body on the table, smelled fuel on it, and realized these creatures were eating their fuel. When they looked at the fuel tank monitor, they saw it was full of them. Luckily, their ship had a second fuel tank that was still safe. The only way to save themselves was to manually shut off the first tank before the creatures contaminated both. John tried to get a wrench from the storage room, but the alien blocking his way kept repeating that Will was in danger. With no other choice, John had Judy use the 3D printer to make a new wrench while he prepared to fight the creatures. In the storage room, June learned from Will that the alien was protecting him because he had saved it before, suggesting they might have a mental connection. June became lost in thought. As John fought the alien eels, the ice above the ship cracked again, causing the ship to tilt. Judy was trapped under a box, and Penny fell into a pool of sewage filled with the creatures. At the same time, the backup fuel tank turned on. John managed to pin one of the eels down, grab a knife, and kill it. Meanwhile, Penny was throwing salt in the hallways to scare the creatures away. John ran to the basement to save Penny as she screamed. He cut the fuel line, which made all the eels go toward the leak. Judy managed to get a wrench and free herself from the box. In the storage room, June tricked Will into making the alien let her out. But as soon as she was free, she ran straight for the ship's cockpit. To understand June, we have to look at her past. Just 2 days earlier, she had drugged her twin sister, taken an identity chip from her arm, and pretended to be her sister to get on the main ship, the Resolute, which was supposed to take people to a new home. But her sister's boyfriend saw her and followed her. He soon figured out she was an imposter. During their argument, the cabin door was accidentally opened, and he was pushed into space. As the ship prepared to leave, June watched him disappear disappear into space through the open door but did nothing to stop it. Now, once again ready to leave others behind to save herself, she sat in the cockpit, about to eject and escape. She started a countdown that could cause the ship to break apart and lose its navigation. Once again, June was torn about whether to stop it. At that same time, Morin was trying to install a final part to fix the ship but was having trouble. Surprisingly, June came and helped her install it at the last second. They finally fixed the engine and got everything ready. They all gathered in the cockpit. John pushed the lever to take off, but the ship didn't move. An alarm showed they only had 10% of their fuel left. Judy suggested getting rid of all the fuel because the eels in the tank could block the engine. Morin agreed it was a risk, but said the system showed no backup fuel. Judy told her that the fuel left in the pipes would be enough to get them out. John agreed, and Judy opened the valve, releasing all the eels and the rest of the fuel. At that moment, their spaceship started. The ice above them was still falling as John carefully steered the ship safely out of the collapsing glacier. Luckily, John was a great pilot, and he got them out just in time. They saw a clean, untouched forest in front of them, but their relief didn't last long because they were almost out of fuel. Still, a good pilot is always ready. The landing wasn't smooth, but he landed the ship safely. Then, they got some more great news. Other survivors had set up a camp on the planet. The parents rushed to the storage room to find Will. They saw the alien holding onto him to protect him, and John was clearly impressed. Meanwhile, the main ship, the mothership, was damaged but still working, and people were fixing it quickly. But June wasn't happy about this at all. We learned that she had been caught and questioned on the mothership before. The person questioning her said that cameras had recorded her killing someone. Just then, an alarm went off all over the ship, which stopped the questions and gave her a chance to escape. It was clear that she was the only one who didn't want to go back to the mothership. Morin discovered that the records for the 3D printer had been altered. Someone had broken the rules and run a program to make a weapon, but no one knew who. At the same time, the alien entered Will's bedroom and gave him a gun for protection. It was clear the alien had secretly used the printer. When June noticed how close Will and the alien were, she grew jealous and quickly tried to get on the boy's good side. It was obvious she was already planning to use the alien. Controlling a powerful robot like that could put her in charge of the planet. Meanwhile, the parents found the other survivor camp. Excited to see more people, everyone hugged. Don was there too, along with his pet chicken. Angela, the young woman they had rescued, was resting in the medical room. While caring for Angela, Judy learned that alien robots were responsible for the attack on the mothership. Morin and the others continued trying to contact it when John spotted wreckage from the mothership on the map. The parents and Don decided to investigate. Judy drove back to their spaceship to confront Will, realizing he had known the truth all along. She tried to warn their parents using the communicator, but Will stopped her. He explained that the alien wasn't the same anymore and had saved their lives. Judy refused to listen and ran toward the cockpit. Thinking quickly, Will restarted the communication system, disabling it for 30 minutes. He then began packing, preparing to send the alien away. June witnessed everything. After Will left, she retrieved the gun the alien had made for him from under his bed. Judy caught up with Will, who explained that he needed to take the alien far away to protect everyone, including the alien itself. Penny soon joined them, and the three left together. As they crossed a log bridge, they heard a strange sound behind them, and a monster suddenly appeared. Penny clapped her hands, and flowers began to bloom. Judy tried clapping as well, and the flowers around her bloomed too. Will knelt and clapped, and the alien copied him, raising its metal hand. Flowers bloomed all around them. The moment was broken by a loud roar. The alien warned that Will was in danger, and they hurried away. A cliff soon blocked their path, but the alien knocked down a large tree to form a bridge. As they prepared to cross, the monster appeared again. The alien shifted into attack mode and scared it away. When it turned back, it returned to its normal form and copied Will's victory gesture. Will nearly slipped in excitement. Soon after, June arrived at the same spot, having followed them secretly. Elsewhere, the parents drove their vehicle to the mothership wreckage. At first, they believed a meteor had caused the damage, but after examining the marks, Morin realized it had been an attack. Inside the storage room, they searched for supplies but found mostly junk. Eventually, they found a box labeled signal transmitter, but inside was whiskey. Don admitted he had swapped it to hide liquor, making Morin furious. She stepped outside and noticed the signal receiver. Realizing they were cut off, she returned, grabbed the whiskey from Don, and began drinking. Back with Will's group, they spotted another group of survivors in the woods. To keep the alien hidden, they stayed out of sight. Among the group was a handsome boy, and Penny immediately developed a crush. When he dropped a letter, they picked it up. When the boy returned looking for it, he discovered them and the alien. He was about to call for help, but Penny used the letter to blackmail him into silence. Since the letter was important, he agreed and left. They continued on and reached a cave. John's group ran into trouble when their vehicle lost power, forcing them to stay near the wreckage overnight. Realizing his parents wouldn't return that night, Will decided they would stay in the cave and keep the alien company for one last evening. As night fell, his parents sat near the signal receiver, drinking Don's whiskey and watching the sky. A purple glow suddenly appeared in the distance, revealing jellyfish-like alien creatures floating through the air. Later, back in the cave, Penny drew on the stone wall with red clay. The three covered their hands in the clay and pressed their handprints onto the wall. The alien watched quietly as the lights on its face flickered. Late that night, while they slept, the alien knelt before the wall, coated its metal claws in red clay, and pressed its own handprint beside theirs, wanting to belong. Back with Morin, she and John got into an argument and she got up to leave. She had only walked a few steps when an earthquake started. The signal receiver behind them fell over, and even though they tried to run, it was too late. They were trapped inside the wreckage. Desperate, they banged on the metal walls, hoping Don would rescue them. Meanwhile, Don was still busy loading his smuggled whiskey onto the vehicle. Luckily, after he finished, Don started looking for them and eventually found them trapped. The next morning, Don used an explosive to blast a large hole and rescue them. Over at Will's camp, after spending one last night with the alien robot, they got ready to say goodbye. The alien picked up a stone and gave it to Will as a gift. It once again warned Will that danger was coming, but Will said that the robot was the one in danger and that it had to stay there. With that, Will turned and walked away. The alien robot, still worried, tried to follow. Will told it one more time to stay put. As he left, the robot's face glowed with what looked like sadness. As they left, June was watching them from up high with a smile. Once they were far enough away, she quietly went into the cave. The alien robot was facing the stone wall, looking lost. June's real plan was to get the alien robot for herself. She wanted a powerful bodyguard. She started to manipulate it, telling the alien that humans couldn't be trusted and would betray it, even Will. She added that only she would save the robot, then turned and left. The nights on this planet were very scary. A woman saw a large, fluttering moth and was about to touch it when a giant tongue shot out, grabbed the moth, and swallowed it whole. This scared her so much that she just lay there without moving. Because they lost the signal receiver, they couldn't contact the mothership. To survive, they came up with a new plan: build a giant lighthouse to send a powerful beam of light into space as a distress signal. Elsewhere, Morin's calculations led her to an unbelievable and deeply worrying discovery. Finally, she made a decision. She went to the storage room, found a giant package, and was loading it onto a vehicle when John saw her and asked what she was doing. She explained there might be a problem with the sun, as it was rising earlier each day. John said this was normal on Earth, but Morin told him the change was happening way too fast. After saying goodbye to John, she drove off to investigate. At that moment, June found Will and asked for the alien robot's help. She hinted that she wanted the boy to bring the alien back. Just then, Don came by and recognized June. She was the one who had stolen the only signal flare, which almost got him killed. He confronted her about what she did, but she was so good at talking that he was left speechless. As he walked away, Judy was looking through the warehouse when she felt something was wrong. She spun around and hit Don with her elbow, breaking his nose. They then went to the medical room, where Don told her that June had stolen the signal gun and left him behind. He learned from Judy that June had never mentioned this. Judy then confronted June, who made up a story to trick her, saying she was the victim and warning her not to trust everything Don said. At that moment, Judy couldn't tell who was lying, so she left to get back to her work. On Morin's journey, as the sun was about to set, her flying device was finally ready. She cut the ropes and rose into the air. As she got higher, an amazing view appeared below her. She turned to face the sun, but just then, the system warned her that there was Hawking radiation nearby, in other words, a black hole. The group of human survivors, stranded on an unknown planet and unable to contact their mothership, worked together to build a giant lighthouse. When they flipped the switch, a powerful beam of light shot into the sky, and everyone cheered. The light attracted swarms of fluttering moths. June was among the crowd. She quietly slipped away to the high-tech fence meant to keep creatures out and reprogrammed it to allow things through. Clearly, she had a plan. Afterward, she returned to camp and told John that his son was hiding the alien in the woods. John confronted Will and demanded answers. A frightened Will confessed everything. The mothership, the Resolute, had malfunctioned because of the alien robot, causing them to crash on this planet. He admitted the robot had once gone on a rampage, but insisted it had changed and had saved their family family and others during the storm. John didn't care about explanations. He only wanted to know where the robot was. Will refused, afraid his father would hurt it. Suddenly, a monstrous roar echoed through the camp. A massive creature began climbing the lighthouse. People scattered in panic. The light that attracted the moths had also lured the creature that hunted them, likely part of June's plan. The lighthouse, built in a hurry, couldn't support the monster's weight and collapsed. As Penny tried to flee, the creature spotted her. June urged Will to call the alien. At that moment, no one cared that the robot existed, only that it could save them. Penny hid inside a tent, believing she was safe. Then a recorded message from the mothership began playing. She rushed to shut it off, but the sound drew the monster's attention. Tore open the tent and charged. John arrived just in time, standing between Penny and the creature. He raised his knife, but it was useless against the monster's fangs. As it lunged, something slammed into it. The alien robot had arrived. Will felt relief, while the others stared in shock. The monster roared again, calling another creature. John and the others fled as the alien robot was pinned down by both monsters. It didn't fight back, obeying Will's earlier command. Panicking, Will ran outside. Inside the ship, June watched with a satisfied smile. Seeing the robot about to be destroyed, Will screamed for it to turn strong. The robot's facial lights turned red. It threw the monsters aside and stood in a four-armed battle mode. When another creature attacked, the robot's hands glowed yellow as it crushed and hurled the monsters away, defeating them easily. Just as everyone thought it was over, the robot turned toward the humans, its claws glowing. Will ran in front of it as his father shouted for him to stop. His mother arrived at that moment. Will grabbed the robot's claws, and as it looked at him, it powered down. The red light faded back to blue. Inside the ship, June quietly planned her next move. Afterward, Will's family fully accepted the alien robot and brought it aboard their ship. Inside the cabin, Morin shared the results of her tests. The planet's orbit was unstable, and a black hole had formed behind the sun. If they stayed, the planet would slowly spiral closer until everything burned. The survivors would die unless they escaped soon. As Morin and John debated whether to tell the others, Penny secretly listened from the doorway. The next morning, the survivors gathered to discuss the alien robot. From Angela's account, they learned the first attack had been planned by alien robots. She had been badly injured, and her husband had been killed. Victor, the group's leader, proposed putting the robot on trial and locking it up as they once did on Earth. John argued that the robot had changed, like a rebooted machine, and had saved lives the night before. In the end, they agreed to keep the robot isolated from the rest of the group. Furious, Angela stormed out, with June following close behind. June tried to manipulate her by pretending to offer psychological help, but Angela walked away. Meanwhile, Don told Victor they needed fuel to escape the planet. The alien eels had consumed most of it, but Don believed fuel from their crashed ship in the desert was still usable. In return, he demanded more money. Outside, Angela noticed a green ribbon tied to a rope. Following it, she found a package. Inside was a gun. Without hesitation, she hid it behind her back. In the forest, Will examined strange stones when the alien robot approached and handed him a larger rock. Will said they had similar rocks on Earth. The robot split it open, revealing colorful ores inside. Then it raised its hand for a high five. Will smiled and returned the gesture. The lights on the robot's face glowed softly, almost like happiness. Meanwhile, Don had already left to find fuel. He hadn't gone far when a cliff blocked his path, and gas started shooting up from the ground ahead. Don wasn't bothered. He casually turned on some music and took a different route. Back at the camp, Penny had asked the handsome boy out on a date. When they got to their spot, they saw that the waterfall had dried up because the planet was getting hotter. Penny then told him her plan. She was going to pretend to fall into the water and yell for help so he could rescue her. And after that, we could really fall into a hormone yoga session. It was clear Penny had liked the handsome boy since they first met, and now the two of them were falling in love. It's quite surprising that they could still find time for romance in such a dangerous place. On Don's end, they had reached the location of the spaceship, but it was nowhere to be seen. They thought the ship might have fallen off the cliff, but it was too high to see anything. Shortly after, Victor called off the deal and went back to camp. When Judy found out about their deal, she confronted Don. He admitted he was just trying to make some money and was now mad that he couldn't. Angrily, he kicked the ground, only to hear a metal sound. After digging through the sand, they discovered the spaceship had been buried right under their feet. They quickly found the entrance to the ship and connected the fuel hose. Since the area could collapse at any time, they used 2 vehicles and ropes to keep the spaceship stable. Just as the last drop of fuel was being taken out, the ship's balance shifted, and it was about to fall off the cliff. They decided to cut the ropes and let the ship fall. However, Don was still inside. He rushed to the storage room, opened a box, and discovered June's real identity. He knew Judy was too kind to give up on him, so he had no choice but to cut the last safety rope himself. The ship then fell. As everyone rushed to the cliff to mourn, a hand reached out. At the last second, Don had managed to escape. On the spaceship, Angela found out June was pretending to be a psychologist and agreed to have therapy with her. June used the chance to bring up Angela's painful memories from her time on the mothership, but couldn't get her to the next step of her plan. Waiting outside the room, June's smile showed that everything was going just as she wanted. After the session, Angela couldn't sit still. She left her room and asked where John's family's spaceship was. Meanwhile, Will and a few others were playing poker on the spaceship. June noticed Angela walking toward them with a cane. Soon after, Angela made up a reason to send Will away, asking him to invite his mother to play with them. When the alien robot tried to follow, John told it that Will would be right back, which calmed the robot down. Penny noticed the screen on the robot's face was changing expressions. It looked like it was smiling, which she had never seen before, and it made John happy. But just then, Angela appeared behind him. When John asked if there was a problem, Angela raised a gun at the robot. Seeing the gun, the robot's face screen turned red, and it changed into attack mode. John told the robot to leave. When Will reached his mother, she hesitated but finally agreed to go with him. Sensing something was wrong, Will rushed back toward the ship. As he arrived, he saw Angela shooting at the alien robot. Enraged, the robot shifted into combat mode, growing 2 extra arms. It advanced on Angela, throwing John aside when he tried to stop it. Will screamed for the robot to halt, and it froze, recognizing his voice. Horror filled Will's face. The family gathered around the injured John, while Will watched the alien robot standing at the doorway, looking down with what seemed like guilt. Inside, June comforted a shaken Angela, assuring her that no one would blame her. Will carried the alien robot into the woods and stopped at a cliff. Hugging it, he said his final goodbye, telling it that he had to take responsibility and that it had to jump. The robot looked at the cliff, then back at Will, as if waiting for him to stop it. Seeing Will's tear-streaked face, the robot stepped forward and fell, shattering into pieces below. As the group loaded fuel to prepare for departure, the ground suddenly shifted. The road collapsed, leaving only a path through a field of erupting gas. They noticed the eruptions occurred at regular intervals, every 3.5 minutes. Calculating their top speed, they prepared to cross. When the gas died down, they drove forward, but trouble struck. A control cable came loose, causing braking problems and slowing the fuel vehicle. With only 2.5 minutes left, the blonde boy volunteered to climb onto the roof to reconnect the cable. Despite being nearly thrown off, he held on and managed to fix it after several attempts, allowing the vehicle to accelerate again. Just as relief set in, with only seconds left, a violent gas eruption struck. The vehicle jolted and flipped. Judy rushed over and found the blonde boy trapped beneath the fuel tank. A rock wedged beneath the vehicle prevented it from crushing him completely, giving them hope. However, the rock had punctured the tank. Moving it could spill all the fuel and doom their escape. Captain Victor suggested calling another vehicle, warning that lifting it now would waste everything. Don climbed into a tank and managed to raise the fuel vehicle, but fuel poured out through a large tear. Though the mission failed, the blonde boy was freed. They continued their journey in the tank, the blonde boy riding in the back. At first, spirits were high. He joked about getting new legs, and Judy promised to teach him to surf when he recovered. But his condition worsened quickly. Despite Judy's desperate efforts, he died. Meanwhile, John and Morin went to find Angela to learn who had given her the gun. Suddenly, gas erupted in front of their vehicle. John reversed, but the gas followed. He swerved sharply and backed onto a slope, stopping only after hitting something. When they opened the door, they realized they were stuck in a pit of thick tar. The smell was overwhelming, and movement was impossible. Their communication antenna had snapped off and lay just outside. With no way to call for help, they had to escape on their own. They found a rope and attached a hook. John climbed onto the roof and tried to secure it, unaware the vehicle was slowly sinking. When Morin shouted, he scrambled back inside just as tar swallowed the vehicle. Trapped, their oxygen dwindled and the temperature climbed. Determined to save her, John took the only spacesuit. Ready to sacrifice himself, he helped Morin put on the helmet, calling her the strongest person he knew. As he reached for the hatch, she stopped him with a sudden idea. They could use the vehicle's airtight seal to force the tar away. The vehicle still carried helium, used earlier to test the planet's atmosphere. They grabbed a toy tunnel meant for their daughter and attached it to the hatch to create a temporary airlock. Pumping in helium, they waited, then crawled through the tunnel, cutting themselves free with a knife. Escaping at the last moment, they burst into laughter from relief. Elsewhere, June hummed quietly, satisfied with her plan. She returned to the cliff where the alien robot had fallen. Using binoculars, she saw its shattered remains below. Climbing down, she gathered the pieces. Will had once saved the robot, earning its loyalty and protection. June believed that if she could revive it, she could control its power. After reassembling the parts, she waited, but the robot remained lifeless. Frustrated, she screamed in rage, wondering what it would take to bring it back. Captain Victor returned to the camp, where the handsome boy found his father and told him about Penny's warning that their planet was going to be destroyed. Meanwhile, June had gone back to her cabin and was watching the video files that Will had recorded. At that moment, the sleeping robot parts seemed to react to a sound from the video. John and Morin, who had just barely survived the tar pit, were walking back to the camp when they heard the sound of a spaceship's engine. They followed the noise, climbed a hill, and saw Captain Victor and his family getting their spaceship ready for takeoff. Since they had used most of their fuel to rescue the blonde boy, they didn't have much left. Their plan was to use what they had to escape the planet. But Morin told them their ship was too heavy and they didn't have enough fuel to get through the atmosphere. They would run out of fuel before they reached space and would crash. Victor refused to believe her and insisted on launching anyway. While they were talking, John snuck onto the spaceship, opened the cockpit door, hit the emergency stop button, and then used the communicator to call all the survivors to a meeting. There, John told everyone that according to his wife's research, their planet's orbit had changed, and it would soon get dangerously close to the sun. The temperature would rise until everything on the planet was burned up. Morin was inside the spaceship, trying to figure out how to make it lighter so they could use the last of their fuel to escape the planet's gravity and be rescued by the mothership. At that moment, a picture on Will's t-shirt gave her an idea. She quickly went outside and announced that they needed to strip off all the parts they didn't need to make the ship light enough to fly, including the navigation system. But the navigation system is like the spaceship's brain and is needed for takeoff. Morin then suggested that they didn't need to fly the ship from the inside. She said that in the early days of space travel, NASA's capsules were just like tin cans controlled from the ground. They could use that old-fashioned method to launch from the planet. After that, they started taking the spaceship apart. Morin met with her daughter Judy, who told her about how June had stolen her sister's identity. They then drove back to the spaceship. Inside, Morin saw her son with June, so she sent Will away and tricked June into going into the storage room, then locked her inside. June tried to use sob stories to get sympathy, but Morin didn't fall for her tricks anymore and didn't trust her at all. As Morin was about to leave, June threatened her, saying she had messed with the escape ship. Morin didn't believe her empty threat and turned to leave. Morin found John. Because they had taken so many parts off the spaceship, it could now only be flown by hand. Choosing a pilot was now their biggest problem. John and the others were looking at data on a computer. Because of the incredible force during takeoff, the pilot would probably pass out, so they needed the person who would wake up the fastest. It turned out that John woke up the quickest, so he was the only person who could do it. But John refused, not wanting to leave his wife and children. Morin reminded him of his promise to come back to them safely. They had a family meeting, and after talking it over, they agreed to let John be the pilot. Before the real launch, they did a practice run. They used ropes tied to a hatch to feel like gravity, and John was put under more and more force until he passed out. He woke up a short time later and, with his wife's help, continued to fly the simulation. But he was still too slow, and the first try failed. They then did several more practice tests, but it was too much for John's body, and they had to stop to let him rest. Just then, they got a message from the mothership. Because of the black hole, the ship had to leave this part of the universe in 24 hours. If they couldn't get on it by then, they would die with the planet. Will went to the storage room where June was locked up. She told him that other people could fly the spaceship and it didn't have to be his father. Just as Will was about to ask more, his mother called him away. After a short discussion, Don showed that he knew a lot about the spaceship. That's when they remembered that Don was the ship's repairman and knew everything about it. He knew the spaceship better than anyone and was asked to help, but at first he said no. As he was walking away, Judy caught up with him. She convinced him and he finally agreed. After that, the two men did the test together and surprisingly, it worked on the very first try. But with time running out, they didn't have a chance to do a second test. John said goodbye to his family one by one and Don asked Judy to take care of his pet chicken. With everyone watching, they got into the vehicle and went to get the spaceship ready for takeoff. Morin also went back to the spaceship to start the launch sequence. The two sisters sat nearby, ready to watch. A tearful Will was very worried about his father. He then went back to where June was being held and asked who could fly instead of his father. June opened her backpack and showed him the head of the alien robot. She said they could bring it back to life. Will said no, feeling that it was his fault the robot had turned bad. June insisted that this time they could make it good if he would just open the door. She said they could go together and save the robot and it could take his father's place so he could come back. The young boy was deep in thought. By this time, John and Don had already reached the spaceship and Morin was in position. As his wife counted down, the spaceship successfully took off. off. As it went up, the gravity got stronger, and both men passed out. Morin kept calling to them until they woke up. Following her instructions, they successfully flew the ship, letting out heat from the engine. Everyone was relieved to see it was working, but then they faced the next danger, a strange cloud. Just as the two were getting ready for their next instruction, someone appeared behind Morin and knocked her out. It was June. The scene then cuts to Will, tied up in the room where June had been held. Turns out that June had tricked Will into letting her out. Without anyone giving commands, the spaceship soon exploded in midair as everyone watched in horror. It looked like John and Don had just died. Inside the hall, 3 people are sad about the explosion, but Will believes his father is still alive. He insists it must be a machine problem, and that's why they can't contact him. At this moment, Judy plans to look for her mother, who was taken away by June. Will wants to go with her, but Judy says no and asks him to stay. Will knows that all of this happened because of his own mistakes. Holding the signal receiver, he goes back to his room. Judy makes one last meal before leaving to find her mother. Elsewhere, Morin wakes up to find herself looking at the taken-apart pieces of the alien robot and a free June. June then ties Morin to a tree and starts putting the robot back together, but it still doesn't do anything. June guesses the problem isn't with the robot, but with the spaceship itself. Saying this, she takes Morin into the alien ship. Morin tries to push June away to escape, but accidentally sets off a reaction. Just like what happened on the mother ship, the spaceship's special engine reacts. Morin says she had seen it before when she touched it in a secret area on the mothership. Then, both of them lift their hands and touch a groove at the same time. Unexpectedly, the engine successfully turns on, and the alien door opens. This brings back memories for June. She remembers that while escaping on the mothership, she heard 2 people arguing that the aliens might come back for the engine, and if it were lost, everyone would die. Now, they finally understand the robot didn't attack the mothership for no reason. Humans had actually captured an alien ship and stolen its engine. The aliens were just trying to get their property back. At this time, Judy, in her vehicle, uses a locator and finds a signal far away. She checks it and realizes it's her mother's vehicle and immediately leaves to rescue her. June is busy putting the alien robot together. Even though they found the spaceship's engine, the robot still won't turn on. Frustrated with the pile of useless metal, June gets angry and even kicks it. What she doesn't notice is that when her arm touched the wreckage of the alien spaceship, it slowly started to change. Just then, she hears some rustling and the screams of a chicken in the bushes. Curious, she looks and pulls back the leaves to find the pet chicken. Suddenly, Judy appears behind her and knocks her out with a stun device. She quickly unties her mother, grabs the chicken, closes the vehicle door, and gets ready to drive away. However, the alien robot, which has suddenly come back to life, blocks their path. They try to back up, but the robot grabs the bumper, and the vehicle won't move, its back wheels just spinning. Then, the stunned June surprisingly gets up from behind the robot, which then gives a warning. The alien robot seems to have accepted June as its new master, since she was the one who brought it back to life. Meanwhile, Will, frustrated with himself, is taking out his anger by smashing decorations. While doing this, he throws the rock the alien robot gave him, and it splits in 2. Will smells it and discovers it has a foul odor, like poop. He takes it to a biologist to be checked and learns it is a powerful biofuel, basically fossilized super poop. Every spaceship had a machine to turn poop into fuel, but it would take humans at least 2 or 3 years to make enough fuel to leave the planet. But if they could collect enough of this super poop from a certain cave, it would be much easier. But then the scientist brings up an important point. In the sample, he found traces of every creature he knew of on the planet, which meant that the creature making the super poop was at the top of the food chain. Collecting it would be extremely dangerous. Even so, they gathered everyone and went to the cave. As they walked with torches, they saw a huge amount of the super poop in front of them. The group excitedly moved forward to look at it when suddenly, Victor stepped on something. He looked down and realized it was a fresh pile of it right under his foot. He shined his flashlight up and saw giant alien bats hanging overhead. They gathered to discuss what to do. The good news was that there was enough biofuel to fuel all their spaceships. The bad news was they needed to break it down and carry it out of the cave without making any noise. Carefully, they went into the cave to collect it. At one point, someone accidentally dropped a crowbar, but luckily, the quiet sound didn't wake up the creatures. They continued collecting without any more problems. On another note, Penny was asking Will about the radio he always carried. Just then, the radio unexpectedly made a crackling sound. They quickly turned it off after realizing it might be a message from their father, but the noise had already woken up the alien bats. In a panic, they hurried out of the cave. In the chaos, the scientist was caught by a bat. Realizing her boyfriend was still inside, Penny rushed back just in time to help him dodge an attack. As they tried to escape, a bat blocked their path. In the next second, Angela, who was still in the cave, pulled her to safety. Looking at the bats, they realized the creatures were blind and only used sound to find things. They held their breath and tiptoed past them, almost making it out. But suddenly, a bat charged at them. They quickly ducked, and just as a bat hovered over Penny, drooling, Angela created a distraction by throwing a rock, allowing them to finally escape. The relieved pair hugged each other. Will was thrilled, saying he had sent a radio message to his father, who had replied, though he still didn't know where he was. Everyone packed up the samples they collected and went back to their spaceship. Meanwhile, above a planet, a spaceship wreckage was floating in space. John and Dawn had actually survived and were very happy because they learned from the radio that Will had found the fuel. Although they had miraculously survived the explosion, the oxygen in their spacesuits would only last a few more hours. Luckily, John contacted his son using Morse code and learned about the fuel. They would be rescued very soon. On the planet, one spaceship after another successfully launched using fuel made from the superpoop. Just then, Will and Penny heard the sound of an engine and hurried to meet it. They were about to share the good news with their mother when June appeared from the other side, with the alien robot following her. At her command, the robot walked toward them. Will tried to stop it, but was suddenly knocked down, falling hard. It was clear that June was now the robot's master. She declared that she had saved it this time, saying that friends don't let friends walk off cliffs. Suddenly, the signal receiver made a sound. They quickly checked it, and John told them through the radio that they would launch a signal flare in space so they could find them using the spaceship's thermal imaging. But Morin's ship had to leave in just 88 minutes, so they needed to act fast. Although June disagreed, she couldn't fly the ship and had to reluctantly agree. Meanwhile, in space, Dawn was putting together circuits, getting ready to release a stream of burning gas from the wreckage. Just then, a floating object in his helmet got into his eye, and since he couldn't see, he had to give the job to John. On the spaceship, Will handed a baseball to the alien robot, hoping to bring back its memories. Unexpectedly, the robot just threw the ball away, leaving Will disappointed. Just as the spaceship was about to take off, the planet faced its final destruction. Everyone got to their places. With Morin as the pilot, the spaceship successfully launched and flew through foggy skies into space. But then, something strange happened. Even though they were in space, there was no zero gravity, and things didn't float. Will asked his mother if they had reached orbit, and she said they had. It turned out that before they left, the robot had taken an engine from the alien spaceship and hidden it under their vehicle. At that moment, besides their ship, all the other ships had successfully boarded the mothership. Captain Victor contacted them to say thank you. But because of the black hole, the area had become extremely dangerous, and the mothership had to leave in an hour. Hearing this, they prepared to first rescue John and Dawn. At that moment, the spaceship showed it was low on fuel. June then told Morin she had to put her personal feelings aside and think about what was best for everyone, which sometimes meant sacrificing a few people to save the many. She set a course for the mothership. Morin replied that it was impossible. June insisted that by going back to the mothership, they could all leave together, or she would throw Morin off the ship. Morin, worried about her husband, quickly steered the ship down. Seeing the danger, the robot pushed June into the hull, and the doors closed. Morin then took back control and locked the hull. June ordered the robot to break the glass, but it only left a small mark. Two people, stuck together in the wreckage, continued their work. John said he once thought he would lose his amazing children forever, but crashing on this planet turned out to be the best thing that ever happened, because it helped him find them again. Dawn was moved by John's words, and tears came to his eyes. He managed to clear the particles from his eye, took over the unfinished job, and successfully lit the wreckage. Meanwhile, Morin, using thermal imaging from the mothership, found them. She got the ship's harpoon ready and prepared to fire it for the rescue, starting the spaceship toward them. Soon, Will spotted them. At that moment, June found the emergency escape exit and made her way out. Hearing the noise, Morin fired the harpoon, but it stopped just before it reached its target. John quickly called his wife, but back on the ship, June and the robot had gotten out of the hull. Morin and the others had already left the cockpit and were hiding in the ship's garage. She told the children to get into the vehicle, preparing to face the robot alone. But Will, refusing to believe the robot had betrayed them, walked up to it and asked if it knew who he was, telling it he was its friend. The lights on the robot's face flickered as if it was thinking. It then held out its hand. Just then, Morin, using a crane, threw the robot out into space. She then tied Will and herself to a post with a rope and opened the hatch. The sudden suction threw everything, including the robot, into space. Gasping for breath, Morin quickly shut the hatch and checked on her children. Suddenly, something forced the hatch door open, revealing a strangely shaped alien spaceship. An arm reached out from it. It was the alien robot with another combat-ready robot. The two looked at each other, and the blue light on one's face turned red. It then pointed at the vehicle, walked over, pushed Morin aside, and blasted the vehicle away. Will was also thrown out. The combat robot picked up the spaceship engine. At that moment, Will's spacesuit started leaking. As the combat robot got ready to attack Will, the humanoid robot's lights flickered, as if it were thinking. Just as the combat robot moved to strike, it was suddenly thrown away. The humanoid robot then fixed Will's suit, and Will said he knew it hadn't changed. The combat robot behind him attacked, and the two robots, being the same kind, were evenly matched. Finally, the humanoid robot looked at Will and charged at the combat robot, and they both floated away into deep space. Will went to check on his mother. Although her suit was leaking, it could last a bit longer. The glass on the vehicle was now cracking. The only solution was to close the hatch, but since it had been forced open, the system that opens and closes it was broken. Will crawled out to manually close it. He found the switch outside the ship and, after a lot of effort, managed to close it. Next, he needed to climb to the other side to get in through the airlock. Just as he was about to succeed, he accidentally slipped into space. Suddenly, someone appeared and saved Will. It was his father. Turns out that moments before, June, having a change of heart, had rescued John and Dawn. Meanwhile, the mothership hadn't left them behind and was slowly coming closer. But just then, a strange noise started. The engine of the alien ship inside the garage extended tentacle-like lines, taking control of the entire ship. A massive beam of light appeared, and they were sucked into a black hole. As the light faded, they found themselves in an unknown star system, which looked like the pattern the alien robot had drawn on the ground. And that's the end of Season 1. The story begins with the mothership drifting off course as a powerful gravitational force takes hold. At the same moment, radar systems detect a strange object moving toward the ship at high speed. It turns out to be two robots locked in a violent battle in space. Neither gains the upper hand, and their fight ends when both crash into the already damaged ship. 7 months earlier, John and his family were aboard their ship, the Jupiter, when it too was dragged into the black hole. They were forced to make an emergency landing on an alien planet. Since then, they have survived by growing food inside a greenhouse built from part of the Jupiter. Outside the ship, the planet is extremely dangerous, with air full of toxic methane. Anyone leaving the ship must wear a full space suit and helmet. During one trip outside, John and his son will travel to the coast and discover a strange alien plant, glowing seaweed. John carefully collects some of it in a bottle. For months, Maureen has been working on another problem. With no fuel left, she has tried to repair the engine of a crashed alien spacecraft, but without success. The glowing seaweed is later turned into a Christmas tree, bringing a rare moment of joy. Dawn prepares their last special meal, and they exchange gifts. Will receives a set of car keys, allowing him to finally learn how to drive. In return, he gives gifts of his own, including a book written by his sister Penny about their journey through space. Their group also includes June, a clever but dangerous woman. Because of the risk she poses, Maureen keeps her locked in a room. Suddenly, an alarm sounds. The planet's harsh monsoon winds have torn holes in the greenhouse plastic. The many patches already covering it show this has happened many times before. Later, Will has his first driving lesson in the rover. He quickly realizes it barely moves, running on almost no power. The spacecraft is nearly dead, with even the main systems shut down. Their only electricity comes from solar panels, just enough to power the suits and the oxygen system. After studying the weather, Maureen makes a shocking discovery. Massive storms appear every 23 days at the exact same time, as if controlled. She forms a risky plan: move the Jupiter into the storm's path and use lightning to recharge the ship and escape the planet. One night, an alarm wakes them. A huge tear has opened in the greenhouse. Without thinking, John rushes outside without a spacesuit. His hands are badly frostbitten and toxic gas floods in. Dawn arrives just in time to save him, but the accident destroys all their crops. With no other choice, they decide to act on Maureen's plan immediately. They dye plastic sheets to create a sail and use the rover to build a mast, turning the spacecraft into a sailboat. Using a map, they chart their course. Once ready, they launch the Jupiter into the sea, transforming it into something they never imagined. As they sail, Maureen's instruments show air pressure dropping rapidly. A massive storm is forming behind them. Inside the ship, June senses something is wrong and tells Penny to warn John to lower the sails. Before she can explain, the ship crashes into a reef and becomes stuck. Thankfully, the hull remains intact. June tries to convince Maureen that she is an expert sailor, but Maureen doesn't trust her. Meanwhile, Will notices movement in the water. For a moment, they hope it might be alien robots, but it turns out to be more glowing seaweed. Maureen eventually finds a way to free the ship using its extendable arm. But the danger worsens. The storm is now raging, and massive reefs block their path. As rock walls close in, they scramble to pull down the sails. In the chaos, the mast swings and knocks Will overboard. John reacts instantly, grabbing the rope attached to Will's suit. However, the suit is torn, and toxic gas begins leaking inside. Will is rushed to the medical bay. With no other option, Maureen releases June. As reefs loom closer, the two climb onto the roof. June orders the sails raised to push through the narrow channel. A massive wave crashes over the ship, knocking Maureen down and trapping her foot in a net. June approaches with a knife, terrifying Maureen, but instead, she cuts the ropes and frees her. After working together tirelessly, they finally get the sails up, only to face another problem. A reef to their right is blocking them. They need to shift the ship's weight to make it tilt and slide past the obstacle. The 4 women on board aren't heavy enough to make a difference. At this critical moment, John comes up with an idea. The rover weighs 2 tons. Its weight could be enough to tilt the ship. By now, John can barely move because of his injuries, so he has to trust Will with the job. Will gets into the rover, backs it up, then shifts gears. He makes a sharp turn and crashes it right into the wall. The airbags go off, and the rover's weight causes the spacecraft to tilt. It works. They barely squeeze past the rocks. Turns out June was telling the truth. She really is a great sailor. Because she played such a big part in saving them, they decide to accept her as one of them. Later, while changing her suit, Maureen notices frostbite on her own hands. June then confesses that she was the one who cut the holes in the greenhouse. She explains she did it to force them to leave the miserable planet. Maureen decides to keep this a secret, realizing that, in a weird way, what June did helped them all. Just when they think they are close to their destination, the spacecraft grinds to a halt. A massive waterfall is right in front of them. Everyone holds on tight as John steers the ship. Luckily, they get stuck right at the edge of the waterfall. They go to the roof to check the situation and see a smooth, metal surface below them that looks man-made. They can't help but wonder who built such a huge structure. With their spaceship sailboat stuck on the waterfall and a thunderstorm just an hour and a half away, Maureen gets ready to capture the lightning. She plans to use a kite, tying its string to the ship to recharge its power and get enough energy to fly away. Down below, Don is cleaning the ship to prepare for takeoff. While looking for tools to clear away seaweed, he feels a sharp, terrible pain in his leg. He doesn't realize that a piece of toxic seaweed has attached to his skin and is paralyzing his nerves. He collapses, pulling Penny into the water with him. Hearing their screams, Maureen rushes to save her daughter. At the same time, the kite is caught by a strong gust of wind and torn away. John, thinking quickly, manages to grab the kite string and tie it to a pole just in time. As Dawn and Penny are climbing out of the water, a large patch of toxic seaweed floats toward Penny. She dodges it but is swept over the waterfall by the strong current. Seeing this, Maureen dives into the water after her. Even though the current is fast, their strong spacesuits protect them, and they both land safely at the bottom of the waterfall. After making sure their suits are not damaged, Maureen notices the strange metal area below them. The approaching thunderstorm is clearly being drawn to a large metal pole in the center, which is acting like a giant lightning rod. Maureen quickly uses her camera to record the strange symbols carved into the ground. Meanwhile, Judy and Will carry Dawn back to the medical room for treatment, showing just how dangerous the seaweed's poison is. With only an hour left before the storm hits, Maureen realizes they need to get the kite back. She suggests they could climb up using its string. John immediately starts climbing the pole to get the kite, but they had loosened its screws earlier to take it apart. Just as he is about to grab it, the pole begins to wobble. John falls, and the whole structure comes crashing down. It narrowly misses them, but the kite they needed is now lost. They are trapped at the bottom of a giant waterfall with no clear way to survive. Climbing back up is impossible. With the storm less than an hour away, Will, back in the ship, has an idea. They can build a Faraday cage, a metal box that protects anyone inside from electricity. He suggests using the rover as their Faraday cage, so Maureen and Penny can safely wait out the storm inside it. The vehicle's metal tether could act as a conductor to channel the electricity, just like the kite would have. But there's a big problem. The rover is in the spacecraft's garage, which is now completely underwater. Hearing this, Maureen jokes, "Good thing I married a Navy SEAL." Her husband, John, just rolls his eyes and heads straight for the flooded garage. John ties the ropes, closes the rover's door, and connects a wire to its motor. Meanwhile, Will is distracted by a faint noise coming from the alien spaceship's engine. Before he can check it out, his father calls for him. When John tries to open the garage door, he finds it blocked by a thick wall of seaweed. He gets Judy and some tools to help him clear it. Soon, most of the seaweed is gone. John sends the children up first while he finishes the job. As he is working, water starts to pour into the garage. Judy wants to stay and help her father, but he is already on his way out. They scramble up, and Will closes the door just in time to stop the garage from flooding completely. The rover slides down the tether through the waterfall. Maureen is on the radio, telling John what to do when the storm hits, all while quietly praying praying for the rover to drop faster. But because the rope isn't long enough, the rover is left hanging in the air. As thunder crashes, the storm arrives. In a moment of inspiration, Penny suggests they use the fallen pole pieces to build a ladder. They quickly raise the ladder and hold the other end down with heavy rocks. They climb inside the rover just as the thunderstorm hits its peak. They seal the door at the last second as a massive bolt of lightning strikes the vehicle. As the electricity spreads, both the rover and the spacecraft are in danger of being pulled under. Inside the rover, Maureen holds a crying Penny tightly. After a blinding white flash, the spacecraft systems come to life, fully charged. The storm's energy is incredible. The engines fire up, and after shaking violently, the spacecraft takes off, leaving a fiery trail behind it. As they pull up the tether with the rover still attached, everyone unbuckles their seatbelts and rushes to the garage. John grabs a crowbar and starts banging on the burnt vehicle. He moves to the other side and slowly pries the door open. Inside, Maureen and Penny are unconscious, but they have survived without a scratch. While everyone is celebrating, the sound from the alien engine in the corner of the garage once again gets Will's attention. He crawls over to see it, and a mechanical claw suddenly shoots out. Will dodges just as the claw falls to the floor. It's the arm that was torn off one of the alien robots during its battle. Following Maureen's advice, John packs the arm into a box, and they all head to the upper deck. Maureen goes to check the instruments she used to study the alien engine and notices new readings. As their ship flies through space, the radar goes off. They look at the monitor and see a huge object on the screen. Maureen quickly checks the signal and finds out it's an audio signature, a special sound used to identify ships. The sound is coming from their mothership, the Resolute. This news makes everyone incredibly happy. After everything they've been through, they can finally rejoin the fleet and return to the mothership. Filled with new hope, they rush to prepare for the trip. Meanwhile, June, who heard the news, quietly goes to her room. She pulls a piece of the toxic seaweed from the trash and carefully hides it inside a book. It's clear she is planning something. After facing so many challenges, the family's spacecraft finally gets close to the Resolute. They fly into the mothership's giant hangar and try to send a signal, but no one answers. With the push of a button, their spacecraft successfully docks. They are all excited to reunite with the fleet, including Don, who is still injured and on an 4-drip, holding his pet chicken. Because he is not stable, Don has to stay behind on their ship. Before leaving, Maureen makes sure to handcuff June to a pipe on the spacecraft. After walking through a decontamination chamber filled with white smoke, they finally board the Resolute. To their surprise, the huge mothership seems completely empty. There is no one around. Thinking it might be lunchtime, they go to the cafeteria, only to find old dishes and moldy food everywhere. Feeling that something is very wrong, John tells the children to go back to their ship. He thinks a major accident happened, forcing everyone to evacuate. Maureen, wanting answers, finds the ship's broadcast logs. All she finds is a jumbled, messy recording from 7 months ago, the exact time they were pulled into the black hole. They don't know it yet, but June has already gotten out of her handcuffs and snuck onto the Resolute. She first tries to use a chip in her hand to open a stairwell, but because her status is detained, she isn't allowed. She goes to a room, gathers everything that could prove who she really is, and sets it on fire. In the hallway, the mothership's fire alarm goes off, causing the fire doors on that level to close. The stairwell can now be opened without clearance because of the fire emergency. The closing doors separate John and his family, forcing them to find another way to meet up. Meanwhile, June goes to the data room to change her official files. She even takes a moment to fix her hair and take a selfie. While looking for another way out, Judy is startled when she runs into a little girl. The girl explains that the mothership was attacked by a monster, and everyone ran in panic. She was separated from her mother and has been living alone on the ship for the past 7 months. At the same time, back on their spacecraft, Don is drawn by a strange noise. He opens a large box and finds the alien robot arm inside. He quickly locks the box and tells the others on the Resolute. John tells him not to worry, saying it's just a broken piece of a robot he forgot to mention. But then Don says that the wires on the arm were moving. Will, remembering when he first saw the alien robot in a tree, realizes it is trying to put itself back together. This means the rest of the alien robot might still be on the ship. The group is very alarmed by this and decides to meet in the cafeteria. The little girl offers to show Judy a shortcut. Maureen tells Don to go to the cockpit and use the ship's telescope to watch what's happening and keep them updated. Maureen also learns from Don that June has escaped and is somewhere on the mothership. The little girl leads Judy through a series of pipes to get to the cafeteria, but her backpack gets caught and rips open. Several of her precious belongings fall out, including a photo of her father. Judy learns that the girl's father disappeared on the mothership under strange circumstances. Just then, a strange noise echoes through the pipes. When they look down, they see a robot glowing with a menacing red light. Will is already waiting in the cafeteria. When he and his friend hear noises, they quickly hide behind a table. After hearing the news, John hurries toward the cafeteria. Will and the girl carefully peek over the table to see what is making the noise. To their shock, they see a horse, which seems to have wandered in looking for food. On Judy's side, the alien robot has already started moving toward the cafeteria from the floor below them. June arrives at the medical room, finds the person whose identity she has stolen, and surgically removes the ID chip from her arm. She then goes to the control room, where she deletes the video recordings of her interrogation and of her accidentally causing a man's death. She believes that now no one will know who she really is. From the cockpit, Don sees the red light and realizes it is moving toward the cafeteria. The horse in the cafeteria gets scared by the sounds and starts to neigh loudly. Penny, who grew up on her grandmother's horse farm, is able to calm the animal down. However, the sound of falling dishes from a nearby table gets the alien robot's attention. Will and the little girl quickly hide again. They see a damaged alien robot dragging itself across the floor, looking like a scarecrow. They have no idea how many more scarecrows might be on the ship. Don tries to shout a warning, but he is too far away for them to hear. Step by step, the scarecrow gets closer to Will and the others. Suddenly, a song starts to play. It's John, who has started singing to make fun of the robot. The scarecrow, clearly annoyed, turns and begins to crawl toward John and the others. Seeing this, Don, still in the cockpit, yells at John's group to run. John, in the middle of his song, admits he can't remember the rest of the words, but Maureen cuts him off and just tells him to run. Even though it's damaged, the robot moves surprisingly fast. They quickly run into a nearby room to hide. The scarecrow follows the sound and crawls into the room, but all it finds is a communicator that was left behind. John and the others immediately slam the door shut, locking the robot inside. They can finally breathe again. John jokes to Maureen that she never liked his singing, but this time it came in handy. In the hallway, Judy and the little girl jump down from a passage above and run into June. As Judy looks closer at the girl's photograph, she remembers something. The man in the picture is the same one whose death she accidentally caused. It's a painful memory she has never been able to forget. Eventually, everyone meets up in the main hall. Just then, Maureen sees a spacecraft returning to the mothership, and their faces light up with joy. They rush toward the spacecraft's door, but when it opens, they see not their friends, but a squad of heavily armed soldiers. Following them is the mothership's deputy commander. He explains that they had to escape the Resolute because of an attack from the scarecrows. Maureen asks how the commander knew they were here. He tells her that he got their signal the moment they docked. John tells the commander that they trapped one of the scarecrows in a room. The commander corrects him, saying that he didn't trap it, he let it return. It turns out that Will was not the first human to connect with this alien intelligence, and the full truth is hidden behind a large wall. As the lights turn on, a huge, circular portal is revealed. The commander explains that the Resolute's cockpit was actually built from the cockpit of a crashed alien ship. The only reason humans can travel through deep space is because of this alien technology. They used the alien ship to build the mothership and even managed to capture an alien robot. They discovered that this robot was weak to a certain radio frequency, which allowed them to control it and use it to help run the mothership. The commander explains that the robot is like a key, and without it, humans can't even start the alien engine. Maureen points out that the engine on the mothership is now gone. The robots took it when they attacked. She then tells them that there is another alien engine, the one on their ship. With that engine, the Resolute might be able to continue its journey. Their ship is taken from them, and the family is forced to move their things out. Because Maureen spent 7 months studying the alien engine, she is kept on the mothership to help with the work. Ironically, the Resolute is now dangerously low on water, and John is sent to a dry, desert-like planet to drill for it. Meanwhile, Judy arrives at the medical camp. She thought her experience treating sick patients on a strange planet would make her a doctor, but she is disappointed to be assigned as a nurse doing basic tasks. Don also goes back to his old job. One moment he is walking confidently, the next he gets a hard punch, a normal greeting in his department. He is then told to repair the vehicle he crashed earlier. Everything seems to be slowly getting back to normal, but a new danger is quietly approaching. John gets on a vehicle to go to the drilling site, and Judy goes with him. When they arrive, John gets bad news. The water well had been successfully drilled the day before, and water was flowing. Today, however, the pipes are blocked. Someone needs to go down into the well to see what the problem is, and the leader asks John to do it. He doesn't see any problems in the first 2 sections of the well, so he decides to go deeper. He doesn't know that something is stuck to the pipes below him. At the camp, Judy finds the little girl's lost ring in a pond, only to see that the ring has become so fragile that it breaks into pieces when she touches it. Down in the well, John tries to turn a valve, but a piece of it breaks off in his hand, leaving him confused. Judy, realizing something is terribly wrong, quickly orders everyone at the well to get away. As pieces of the structure start falling from above, John acts fast, pulling his teammate's safety rope to send him to the surface before trying to get out himself. However, his own metal clip suddenly snaps. The planet's water is revealed to be corrosive, and it has also been eating away at the tower built over the well, causing it to slowly collapse. As John tries to climb the wall, his path is blocked when the tower gives way, crashing down and badly injuring a man who now needs to be rushed back to the base. For now, John is safe, but he is trapped deep inside the well. After contacting her father, Judy learns that a tanker truck full of the corrosive water is already on its way to the base. She knows she has to stop it before it causes a disaster. Rushing to a rescue vehicle, Judy quickly calls Don. Just as Don is about to launch a spaceship, he gets her message. He sprints toward the ship and stops the launch just in time, saving the mothership from being destroyed. Back on the spaceship, June was trying to leave quietly, but she didn't get far. Just as she was about to walk out with her bag and a book she'd taken from Penny, police officers blocked her way. They arrested her and took her to an interrogation room. There, she tried to talk her way out of it. She insisted she wasn't a bad person and explained how she had saved Will and his family on the alien planet by expertly steering their ship through a dangerous storm. She pointed out that the whole story was written down in Penny's book. However, when the officer touched the toxic seaweed hidden in the book's pages and then tried to look at the security videos from the day they boarded the mothership, he ran into a problem. All the video footage from that time, especially any showing June, was gone. A moment later, the officer's hands started to feel numb, and then he collapsed. Meanwhile, Will went to the room where the scarecrow was being held. He hoped to connect with the robot again. As he was focused on trying, the mothership's deputy commander appeared behind him. The commander claimed he also wanted to talk to the robot, but he was actually using a device that sent out sound waves to keep it under control. Will told him that this method was useless and that it was like trying to talk to someone by hitting them with a stick. The robots had been nicknamed scarecrows because when their spaceship first crashed, their exposed wires looked like straw. Just then, Will noticed the light on the scarecrow's face getting dimmer, which meant it was confused. He tried to connect with it again, and just as the commander turned off the sonic device, the scarecrow slowly started to move. Will took a robotic arm out of a nearby box and attached it to the scarecrow, successfully fixing their connection. The scarecrow then gently lifted Will's shirt to look at an old scar it had given him before. Will offered the robot a model from his bag and said they could be friends, and the scarecrow looked at it. For a second, Will was hopeful, but then the robot suddenly got angry and crushed the model. Luckily, the commander turned the sonic device back on just in time to save Will from getting hurt. Shortly after Will left, Maureen showed up and yelled at the commander for the way he was handling things. Back in his room, the commander felt terrible about his failure. He took off his shirt, revealing that his own body was covered in scars. They were from his own painful and obsessive attempts to connect with the scarecrow. Later, while talking with Will, Maureen had an important realization. She had been thinking about it all wrong. The alien robots might not be the only key to using the alien spaceships. It was possible that Will himself was the second key. Believing she had found a new way, she took Will to the cockpit of the Resolute. At first, Will was amazed by the view, but then he walked over to where the scarecrow was being kept. He told the robot that even if they couldn't be friends, it didn't deserve to be locked up. In response, the scarecrow pointed to a specific panel. Will followed its direction and saw a handprint. He placed his hand on it and was suddenly shown a vision of a nearby planet being stripped of all its water. He also saw that the friendly alien robot he knew was now on that same empty planet. At the same time, far below, the support structure of the platform over the water well completely broke, leaving John trapped. He didn't know that the metal floor he was standing on was quickly being eaten away. Suddenly, it gave out and he fell even further down. Things got worse when a steel rod went right through his stomach. He quickly tore a piece of his shirt to wrap the wound and was able to contact Judy to tell her how bad his situation was. Panicked, Judy rushed back to the medical room and grabbed all the first aid supplies she could find while getting more information from her father. She planned to take the rover to rescue him, but the squad leader stopped her. He warned her that if she took the vehicle, the corrosive water would destroy its parts before she got there. Then she would be stranded, and he would have to rescue both of them. After desperately trying to convince him, the squad leader finally gave in, and Judy took off. It wasn't long before his warning came true. The vehicle began to shake badly as a part on the right front wheel fell off. The rover crashed, and when Judy got out to check, she saw how badly it had corroded. She couldn't drive any further. Her navigator told her she was still 20 miles away. She decided the only way to get to her father in time was to run. After getting her supplies ready and reassuring her father on the radio, she started running. As they talked, she realized just how badly he was hurt. She stopped and asked her navigator navigator for a shortcut, but it would mean going outside the safe, marked areas. The dangers out there were unknown. She ran into a valley, but her presence immediately attracted several alien dinosaurs. Using her speed and agility, she kept dodging their attacks. To get away from them, she squeezed into a narrow crack in the rocks, and her backpack was almost grabbed by one of the creatures. Terrified, she closed her eyes and pushed herself against the rock. Looking ahead, she burst out again, using her small size to jump and dodge her way to safety. As she ran, memories of her father flashed through her mind, giving her strength. Just before dark, she finally reached the water well where he was trapped. She climbed down through the broken pipes and gave him a shot of adrenaline. After a lot of hard work from everyone, they finally rescued him. Elsewhere, Don and his friend were studying chemical reactions and made a shocking discovery. The stuff that corroded metal could spread just by touching it. They immediately ordered everyone at the base to stop using anything with metal in it, including vehicles and spaceships. Aboard the Resolute, Maureen decided to take Will and the commander to the desert planet to look for the robots. She also wanted to understand the deep connection the robots seemed to have with her son. Meanwhile, on her way to class, Penny saw an unconscious officer being carried away and rushed over to ask what happened. The staff told her that a doctor, June, had reported that the officer had just collapsed. June was then taken to a private office. Looking at the large, nice room, she was thrilled and mumbled about getting a fresh start. Soon after, Penny found her there and asked what she had done to the officer. June said she was innocent, claiming they had just been talking before he fainted, maybe because he was overwhelmed by her beauty. She then closed the door on Penny. Watching from a distance, Penny saw June sneakily throw away a trash bag. Penny went to the garbage room to check it out, but wasn't allowed to go in. Later, in class, she came up with a plan. She grabbed some sand, rubbed it on her and her boyfriend's clothes, then raised her hand and asked the teacher if they could go clean up. Penny hurried out with her boyfriend, who complained that she was dragging him into her plans after not seeing him for 7 months. Just then, a worker came out of the garbage room and they had to hide. They shared a quick, sweet moment, which was enough to make her boyfriend agree to help. When they finally opened the garbage room, a terrible smell hit them, but they went in anyway. Her boyfriend didn't want to climb down into the trash, but after Penny begged him, he agreed. After searching for a long time, they found the trash bag with shredded clues inside. One piece of paper had the word "killed" on it. Just then, the garbage worker came back and turned on the trash compactor. They scrambled to get out, but Penny's leg got stuck. Her boyfriend climbed up the ladder, and it looked like he was going to leave her. Penny screamed for help, but suddenly, the machine stopped. Her boyfriend hadn't left her. He had gone to shut off the power. Penny was safe. Back in their classroom, they put the shredded paper together. The message said, "Curiosity killed the cat." June suddenly walked in, and Penny quickly hid the pieces of paper. After class, June blocked their way and warned Penny not to go through other people's trash, or she might end up like the cat. As they turned to leave, June followed them, saying she had cleared her name and that no one would believe any rumors Penny spread. Angry, Penny walked away. Just then, something strange happened right in front of them. Penny threw her bag in the air, and at that moment, a large hole opened up in the floor of the spaceship, which began to slowly collapse. Only 12 hours earlier, the corrosive substance had been discovered. As a safety measure, anyone boarding the Resolute was not allowed to bring any metal and had to be disinfected. During this process, a man had suddenly fallen down. After he was helped up, a check showed nothing was wrong. However, a pool of blood was found under his knee. He explained that he had steel pins in his leg from an accident 10 years ago, but it seemed they had been completely corroded away. That pool of blood had now grown into the massive hole that appeared right in front of Penny and the others. At that moment, the mothership's alarms went off and everyone started to evacuate. They tried to run back, but safety gates came down, trapping them. They were now in a very dangerous situation, as the only way out was through the hallway that was being eaten away. Scientists on the ship frantically tried to find a way to stop the corrosion, while a team was sent to cut through the ship's wall to rescue them. They took shelter in a classroom. June pressed a cup against the wall, claiming it would help them hear the rescue team, and they could indeed hear something. However, the rescue team ran into a problem. The path ahead was completely corroded. The captain was also facing a huge crisis. If the corrosion reached the ship's oxygen system, everyone on board would die. She had to prepare for the worst, blowing up the entire damaged section, which meant the people in the classroom would die with it. When Don heard this news and realized Penny was trapped, his face grew serious. It was clear he had feelings for her. He quickly contacted Penny and asked what was in their room. When he learned about a large white box, he told her to empty it. He then found the captain and convinced her to try a desperate plan to save them. They could hide in the box, which would then be shot out into space during the explosion. The captain didn't believe that a box made for science samples could hold people. Don promised her it could. When he saw she still wasn't convinced, Don confessed that he had used these same boxes to smuggle steaks 7 times, proving they could keep things fresh. The captain asked if he was a smuggler, and Don had to admit he was. With only 21 minutes left, the captain agreed to his plan. Don sprinted, explaining the escape plan over his radio. But another problem came up. The box could only fit 3 people. June started to play mind games. She said she would stay behind because it was her job to protect the children. The teacher didn't like this and insisted that he should be the one to stay. This was exactly what June wanted. Penny couldn't stand it anymore and pulled June aside to ask her why she was doing this. Penny's boyfriend then stepped up, telling the others to go while he stayed. Not wanting to lose him, Penny quickly stopped him. Just then, her boyfriend found a panel inside the box for controlling temperature. Don told them that if they removed it, they would probably freeze to death in space within a minute. With no other choice, they decided to take the risk. They removed the panel, taped a fire extinguisher inside, and prepared for the worst. The teacher, however, was afraid of small spaces and didn't want to get in. With little time left, Penny convinced June to use her famous persuasion skills. As expected, June successfully talked the teacher into getting into the box by using deep breathing exercises. Penny opened the fire extinguisher to push them forward, and an engineer told Don just before closing the door. As the section of the ship was blown away from the Resolute, their box was shot into space. The temperature inside dropped, and they got colder and colder. Finally, after a rough trip, they were rescued. Seeing Don, Penny burst into tears and greeted him like family. The ship was now safe, but soon after, Don was arrested for smuggling. Will and the other 2 had already arrived on the desert planet, looking for the robot that was connected to him. Since they couldn't use vehicles with wheels on this empty world, they were surprisingly riding 3 horses. As it got dark, they rode their Ferrari horses and set off, quickly setting up safety fences to protect them for the night. It seemed like they were in for a long and dangerous time on this planet. During the night, a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the distance. Will and his group quickly grabbed flashlights to see what it was. As the eyes got closer, they realized they were facing the same type of alien dinosaur Judy had met. The electric fence became unstable, flickering on and off. The smart dinosaur kept testing the fence, and even though it got shocked, it didn't attack right away. Just as the fence failed again, Will ran out. The dinosaur was about to pounce when a burst of red light flashed, scaring the creatures away. As the light faded, it revealed the familiar shape of an alien robot. Overjoyed, Will ran up and hugged it, asking it a ton of questions about how it got there and saying how much he wanted to catch up. The robot stood silently, then started to walk as if it was leading them somewhere. It took them to a cave with drawings on the walls. Will was thrilled and explained what each drawing meant, and most of them were memories he shared with his own pet robot. Suddenly, the robot pointed to a drawing of their very first meeting. This made Will wonder if the robot had forgotten their bond. A connection he felt was fading. Noticing scars on the robot's arm, Will remembered a time on the spaceship when his robot had fought the other robot. The robot in front of him didn't have that scar, and he had a scary realization. This was not the robot he knew. As he told his mother to leave, the robot transformed, blocking the cave entrance and raising its glowing claws. It was a defensive move, not an attack, showing it didn't want to hurt them. Will guessed out loud, asking the robot if it wanted something from him, and the robot seemed to agree. Just as it looked like the robot might attack, the commander appeared and disabled it with an electromagnetic wave. Even though he didn't find his pet robot, Will later climbed a hill and found the exact place he had seen in his vision. Just as he was about to tell his mother the good news, he fell into a hole. He called for help until the familiar figure of the robot rescued him. Later, the robot was spooked by a horse, so Will explained that it was just an animal for transportation, like a rover. As he taught the robot how to calm the horse, it seemed to be thinking hard. The sight of another dead robot caught its attention, possibly making it think about its own 7 months of being trapped by a similar dead robot. A large herd of alien yaks forced them to find a different path, so Will's mother and the commander went to check it out. Back at the camp, the robot tried to be like Will by calming the horse and even took an apple from Will to feed it. He humorously asked for another one, even though Will told it one was enough. After finding a way around the yaks, Will's mother noticed a scar on the commander's chest. He admitted that he had also felt a connection with a scarecrow and that it wasn't entirely safe. As they talked, Will saw the robot melting the ropes used to tie up the horse. He protested, explaining they needed to tie the horse so it wouldn't run away, but the robot didn't seem to understand. Maureen came back and carefully reminded Will to be safe before they left again. However, they soon ran into several alien dinosaurs up ahead. With the robot nearby, the dinosaurs weren't interested in them, but seemed to be focused on the yaks not far away. As the yaks started to move, the ground shook, and the herd stampeded right toward Will's group. The robot gave a danger warning. As the yaks got closer, Will's horse panicked and threw him off. The horse's reins got caught under a fallen rock, trapping it. The herd of yaks was about to run them over. Will and his mother hid behind some rocks, while the robot stood right in front of the trapped horse, its lights flashing red. The yaks stormed past in a cloud of dust. When the dust settled, amazingly, both the robot robot and the horse were fine. The robot casually fed the horse an apple, maybe as its own way of being a friend. Overjoyed, Will ran up and hugged the robot. Seeing this, the commander began to question his own methods. It seemed that not only Will but also a horse could befriend the robot. A ship flew overhead. They were about to reach their destination and leave the desert planet. But then, Will's horse collapsed. It had a cut on its back leg, probably from the stampede, and it seemed to be poisoned. The robot knelt down and placed its hand on the wound, trying to heal the horse in its own way, but it didn't work. The horse's eyes slowly closed. The robot's display showed that it was very sad. It moved a large rock to mark the horse's grave and bowed its head for a moment of silence. They finally reached the meeting point, where the commander's original plan was to capture the robot in a container and control it. However, after traveling together and seeing the special bond the robot had formed with both Will and the horse, the commander had a change of heart. He stopped the operation, deciding he couldn't turn Will's robot into just a tool. He let the robot sit with them in the cabin as they boarded the mothership. People looked at Will and the robot differently as they walked to the section with the alien engine. At Will's command, the robot turned on the engine, pulled in its blue, tentacle-like arms, and carried the engine toward the ship's engine room. Meanwhile, John was talking to the captain about the water supply when the ship received an unknown audio signal. The captain quickly ended their conversation without telling him what the signal was, hinting that more trouble was on the way. John asked Don for help, since Don could get around security and listen to the signal. However, Don was locked up and couldn't do anything. John then went to June, who had the right security clearance. She managed to get the audio for John, all while secretly messing with the communicator at her computer. John and June listened to the audio. It was a message from several approaching alien ships. The situation was getting serious. They were about to leave, but 3 guards were already waiting to arrest John, revealing that June had betrayed him. After he was captured, June went to the ship's doctor, pretending to be concerned about everyone's mental health, to find out what the leaders were planning to do next. Her trick worked. This was all part of a bigger plan made up by John and June to get inside the ship's high command. The ship would soon face a crisis, and June would be made the official counselor to help manage the crew's feelings. The good news was that once Will and his mother returned, they could travel to their new home on Alpha Centauri with the robot's help. The bad news was that the ship was dangerously low on water, which meant only some people could leave, while the rest would be left behind on the desert planet. As soon as Maureen got back to the spaceship, John called her for a quick meeting. They were determined not to leave the people on the planet behind, but they didn't have much time. The moment the robot finished installing the engine, the ship would be ready to leave. But they had a big problem. Even if they picked up everyone from the ground, the mothership wouldn't have enough oxygen for all of them. On top of that, the water from the planet was contaminated. Using this water to make oxygen would corrode the pipes and could destroy the mothership from the inside, killing everyone. Angela said she had found a way to clean the water, but it would take a year to make the oxygen they needed, and they didn't have that much time. While Maureen and John were talking by a window, they saw a nearby planet. After checking some data, they came up with a new plan. They knew the captain would never agree to it, so they decided to mutiny and take control of the entire mothership. The group met to discuss their plan. They had to think about a few things. First, they were running out of time. Once the alien robot installed the engine, the ship would leave. Second, their goal was to take control of the bridge, the command center of the Resolute. They also knew they would face major problems, including the 18 well-trained guards on board. For John, a former Navy SEAL, this would normally be easy, but he was currently in chains and locked up. The heavy responsibility fell entirely on Maureen. At that moment, June said that it wasn't as hard as it looked. You could control people without lifting a finger, just by using their weaknesses. With that in mind, they started their plan. Penny first went to Don. While he couldn't remove the shackles, he brought a welding torch and cut out the entire wall panel that controlled them. Meanwhile, the robot had already put the engine in place. Don put the wall panel on a cart, hobbled back to his squad on one leg, and told the maintenance team leader about the captain's plan to leave the other humans behind. Maureen and 2 others reached the bridge. The captain's plan was clear: fly the mothership to the colony, then send a team back for the others. However, one of the engines suddenly stopped working. It had been sabotaged by Maureen's group. The captain ordered them to be thrown out, and a guard immediately called for backup. As more guards came, Maureen reminded the first guard of the time she had saved his life on the desert planet. Looking grateful, the guard quickly shut the door, blocking the others from getting in. Maureen then called the doctor and asked him to take Will and the robot back to their spaceship. Although the doctor said no at first, the robot's scary red light mode convinced him to let them go. The captain then asked how they could possibly bring so many people on board without enough oxygen. Maureen explained their plan. They would fly the mothership to a nearby gas planet that was rich in ammonia, which could clean the corrosive substances out of the water. With that, the mothership changed its course and began its journey to the ammonia-rich planet. The Resolute was flying toward its new destination. The alien robot walked through its hallways, with Will and Penny following closely behind. Penny noticed that the robot was acting differently. She said that it used to walk behind Will, as if it were protecting him, but now they were the ones following it. Will replied that it was probably just because of everything they had been through lately and that he would get it back to normal. But before he could finish, the robot stopped suddenly, as if it was drawn to something in a room ahead. Yet, it didn't warn them of any danger like it used to. Penny kept nagging him until Will told her to be quiet. They continued on their way, following their silent and mysterious guide. John was locked up, trying to open his shackles with a screwdriver. But then the door opened. The doctor came in, bringing Judy with him. She looked guilty because she'd been caught listening at the door. The doctor wanted John to stop Maureen from taking over the ship. John told him no. Since that didn't work, the doctor decided to try something else. He was going to reveal a secret about something bad Maureen had done. He told John that Will wasn't actually supposed to be on the mothership. To keep her family together, Maureen had made a deal. She traded secret security codes to get Will on the list. And the person she made the deal with? The doctor said it was him. Now the doctor had something to use against them. He threatened John. He said if Maureen didn't stop, he would use her secret codes to open the oxygen system's valves. That would flood the room with gas and make the pressure go way up. If they added the bad water after that, the pipes would explode and their whole plan would be ruined. Their only choice then would be to go to the new planet. And when they got there, he said, Maureen and Will would be arrested and sent back to Earth. Hearing this, John jumped at the doctor, but the doctor just pressed a button that sent an electric shock through the shackles. John fell to the floor and couldn't move. The doctor then locked the door and left. Meanwhile, Maureen was steering the Resolute toward the gas planet. The pressure outside was so strong that a pillar on the ship started to crack. The mothership couldn't fix itself, but Maureen wasn't worried. She had already sent the robot to take care of it. The robot was a great welder and could work perfectly in the danger space outside. Following Maureen's orders, the ship opened its vents to start collecting the ammonia gas they needed. But by then, the doctor had already logged into the security system and locked down the bridge. Luckily, they had a backup plan. John had told June to warn Maureen. But on her way, June ran into the little girl, and seeing her brought back too many bad memories. She couldn't face her, so she took a different route. That mistake made her late. By the time she got to the bridge, it was already locked. Back on the bridge, Maureen's team suddenly lost control of the air vents. The doctor pressed the button. Ammonia gas started flooding in. That wall panel Don had cut out earlier came in handy. It blocked the emergency doors just long enough for most of the crew to get out. But Don and the captain were trapped inside. They tried to open the doors, but it was no use. They finally just sat on the floor, knowing they couldn't breathe the thick air for much longer. June, stuck outside, kept calling for Maureen, but no one answered. She knew she was too late. Just then, the alien robot walked past the locked gates. It didn't stop, but it kept saying, danger, talking to someone Will couldn't see. On the bridge, Maureen and her team were stuck. When she saw that Don and the captain were still trapped, she ran out, got into a small repair ship, and flew out to save them. The flight was really shaky because of the pressure, and she almost crashed, but she was a great pilot. She got to the outer chamber and used a robotic arm to close the outside door. By then, the two inside had already passed out. It was a close call, but she did it. The outside door sealed, and the inside one opened, saving Don and the captain. Maureen could finally breathe a sigh of relief. John's shackles were unlocked. They all knew their plan had failed. The doctor came to the bridge and told the captain to fly to the colony planet. The captain agreed. She started up the systems, and John managed to call his wife, who was flying back. When he heard that Maureen hadn't seen June, he was furious. When he met June, he asked her why she didn't deliver the warning. June was too scared to tell him the real reason, and it was obvious how disappointed he was in her. This time, June knew it was all her fault. Just then, the robot pried open a gate. Inside, the scarecrow was being held, and two guards were shocking it with electricity. When the robot saw its friend so weak, its face glowed red with anger. It knocked down one guard, and the other ran away. Then it ripped the heavy prison door right off and hugged the scarecrow. The scarecrow's light was dim. It was very weak. The robot started to leave with the scarecrow. Will asked where it was going and reminded it that it still had to help them get home. But the robot said no. It went to the mothership's cockpit and tried to start the ship to save the scarecrow. But the controls were broken. Will asked what it was doing, and the robot said it was helping its friend. Will argued that they were supposed to be leading people to a new home, but the robot wouldn't change its mind. As the scarecrow was carried away, the doctor put out an arrest warrant for John's entire family. Outside, Maureen was still flying the small ship back. John was waiting for her. An alarm alarm went off in Maureen's ship. She was almost out of fuel. John decided to take another ship to go get her, but the doctor was listening in. He sent a fake message to the colony planet saying Maureen was a traitor who tried to take over the ship. He lied and said that she and her husband had tried to fix things, but their ship fell into space and they couldn't be rescued. Then the doctor locked all the outside doors and told the bridge to speed up. He said it was to clear the bad water faster, but he was really just leaving Maureen and John behind. As the ship sped up, their two small crafts were thrown away. To get away from the guards, Penny smashed their communicators and the kids hid in the trash room. Will wanted to figure out how to save the scarecrow. The robot pointed to its arm, which had the same symbols Maureen had photographed on that weird metal structure. But that planet was too far away. Then the robot drew a picture of a horse on the wall. Will suddenly remembered a similar place on the desert planet. Meanwhile, the commander broadcast the arrest warrant for Will and his friends. Hearing the news, Judy ran out to find them. At the same time, June, still feeling bad about what John said, went to the commander's room to offer her help. The little girl found Judy. Even though her mom told her to stay away from Will's family, she decided to help her friends. While they were talking, Penny grabbed them and pulled them into the trash room to make a plan. With guards coming, they had to figure out how to escape. They were almost there. An officer opened the door and looked inside, but only saw piles of trash. The little girl had already shown them a secret way out into a storage room. Meanwhile, John and Maureen were drifting further and further from the mother ship. They decided to sneak back on. As they got closer, their ship started shaking like crazy. A giant eye appeared outside their window. It was a giant space fish. It swished its massive tail, and their two little ships went spinning. John tried to use a robotic arm to grab his wife's ship, but the arm broke. They were getting closer to a super hot area below. At the last second, John managed to grab Maureen's ship. They were safe for now, but they only had 12% fuel left, and the mothership was very far away. Will had a big problem. To save the scarecrow, they needed a spaceship. Who would lend one to a bunch of kids on the run? Penny thought of her boyfriend. At lunch, she left a note on his tray with a meeting place. June also found the boy and tried to sweet-talk him into telling her where Penny was, but he wouldn't. He went to the meeting spot where Penny was hiding in a stairwell. The boy also told her that June was now working with the commander. Meanwhile, the scarecrow was in bad shape. It was about to die. The robot showed Will the horse's nameplate, maybe suggesting it was time to bury its friend. But Will told the robot they couldn't just give up and watch it die. Penny rushed back and told everyone that June was with the commander. Since they knew how June thought, they decided to do something she wouldn't expect. They went to the vehicle garage and got a combat rover ready. June and the commander walked right into their trap. They saw the little girl on a security camera, and then they saw a combat rover driving down a hallway with Penny and Judy in it. The commander chased them. The doctor scolded him, saying, "They're on a spaceship. How could they possibly escape?" Just then, a gate closed in front of Judy and Penny. Judy stayed cool and said, "Okay, here's the plan. Speed into the turn, then slow down and punch it." It didn't work out so well. They crashed. The airbags went off and guards caught them. But they weren't worried. It was all part of the plan. The back of their rover was empty except for a single robot arm. On the other side of the ship, Will and two others got to their family's spaceship. When they opened the door, the commander was waiting for them. He couldn't let Will take the robot. It was their only hope. He didn't want to hurt the robot, but he needed its help to get everyone to the new planet. Suddenly, there was a zap of electricity. The doctor had hit the robot with a stun baton, and it fell to the ground. The robot didn't even try to fight back. It just pointed at the fallen scarecrow, silently begging them to save it. The commander saw how weak the scarecrow was, and for a moment, he felt sorry for it. Then the doctor took him away. The robot got up and started to fight back. Seeing the robot defend its friend made the commander realize they both wanted the same thing. He and Will dragged the scarecrow into the spaceship, but the robot, weak from the shocks, fell to its knees. Will yelled for it to get up and fight. In the end, the robot could only trust Will with the mission. As Will closed the door, the robot collapsed. They had to honor its request. They started the spaceship and flew away from the mothership while the robot was locked in a box. In the sky, John and Maureen saw their children's ship. They didn't have time to think because the big airlock doors were about to close. John slammed on the gas, and at the last second, they made it back inside. Meanwhile, the doctor tied up the robot and put a drill with a wire on its head. The kids' ship landed on the empty desert planet. They found the metal platforms that looked like the lightning rods from the water world. After a long search, they finally found the spot the robot had told Will about. They had to put the barely alive scarecrow on the platform so a lightning strike could bring it back to life. A storm was coming coming fast and would be there in minutes. The Scarecrow was fading. They had to hurry. The commander decided to sacrifice himself. He locked Will in the cockpit and dragged the Scarecrow to the spot. As the lightning hit, the commander knew he wouldn't make it back. With a flash of light, Will was thrown from his seat. When he got up, he saw countless red lights everywhere. It was an army of alien robots. He quickly sent out a distress call. On the mothership, John and Maureen planned to rescue Will's robot. Dawn was cutting through a wall right under where the robot was being held. The monitor showed that Will's ship was coming back with all the humans from the desert planet. The aliens were flying a new ship and following them. Hearing this, the doctor and June went to the cockpit to force Will's robot to open a black hole. He kept turning up the voltage, but the robot fought back. On John's side, they heard the alien engine starting. It would take too long to cut through the wall, so John found another way. He walked up to the door, punched the guard, and choked him out to get his key card. But when he got inside, there were tons of guards. A big fight started, but John was fast and took them all down. Inside, the doctor had the voltage on max, and the robot was getting weaker. Another guard ran in, but Don knocked him out with a fire extinguisher. Maureen rushed in, zapped the doctor with his own stun baton, and rescued the robot. By then, Will's ship was back with the last of the humans. Will told the robot he had done what it asked, but the commander had sacrificed himself. Now they had to escape because a huge number of alien robots were coming. Maureen asked the robot to take them to the colony planet, but it said no. Even if they opened a black hole, the other robots might follow them. John said they couldn't lead their enemies to a new home. Maureen agreed they had to fight them here on the mothership. John asked how, and Maureen decided to have their robot lead the enemy robots on board. A group was quickly setting something up. An alien spaceship, glowing red, was getting closer. Its lasers fired, blowing a huge hole in the ship. Then, scary alien robots stormed in, and all the security cameras went out. Will and Penny lost track of their robot. Meanwhile, John and Judy were running with the alien engine to lure the robots. On the other side, Maureen's team was setting up a magnetic trap. The robots were getting closer to John and Judy. John closed the gates to block them, but the doors were like paper. The robots smashed right through them. But this helped Penny see where the robots were, and she told Maureen. With that info, Maureen got everything ready and had everyone hide in one room. Don hid by the door. Just as John and the army of robots arrived, the room filled up with machines. As the last one walked in, Don gave the signal and Maureen hit a switch. Instantly, all the robots froze. The trap wasn't fully charged, so it could only hold them, not destroy them. It would take a full day to get to full power. Just as Maureen felt relieved, she got more bad news. Hundreds of alien ships were on their way and would be there in an hour. Judy came up with a desperate plan. Put all the children on a spaceship with the alien engine, open a black hole, and send them to the colony planet. Maureen hated the thought of splitting up her family, but to save humanity, they had no other choice. The robot put the engine on the children's spaceship. June secretly got on, planning to escape with the robot, but the robot stopped her. The light on its face seemed to say they had to stick together. So June got off. The children said their final goodbyes. June casually picked up a toy ball from the floor. John's family said their last goodbyes, and Judy led Will and Penny onto the spaceship. Just then, the robot walked past Maureen. She and June followed it to where the other robots were trapped. The power was still too low, and the alien robots were slowly starting to move, trying to cut the power lines. A robot opened an outside door. Maureen and June backed away. June asked if their robot would go help, but the light on its face seemed to say this was a final goodbye, and then it turned and left. Finally, June made the bravest choice of her life. She put on a space suit and went alone into the room full of robots. The magnetic forces made it hard to move, and she scratched her helmet, making a crack. She moved one wire, but the robots were still cutting the others. Soon, the crack in her helmet got bigger, and Maureen lost contact with her. Looking outside, she saw only an empty space suit drifting away. As the alien robots cut the last wires, they broke free. They sensed where the alien engine was and headed for the children's spaceship. At that moment, their pet robot was starting the engine. It was about to go fight, but Will stopped it. He told it to keep working while he handled the others. Will stepped outside to face a horde of robots. The lead robot came forward. It recognized him. Will begged it not to fight, but the robot didn't understand and raised its claws to attack. Just then, the Scarecrow swooped in and saved Will. Penny quickly pulled him back inside. To repay them, the Scarecrow fought off all the alien robots. It was an amazing fighter. With its help, Will and the others launched their ship. But when it fought the lead robot, the Scarecrow was a little outmatched and was soon beaten. As the lead robot was about to destroy the spaceship, the Scarecrow jumped in front and took the blast. One of the ship's engines was destroyed, which slowed them down but bought them more more time to open the black hole. To slow the robots down, John and another person decided to destroy the mothership. There was no self-destruct button, so they decided to ram it into the robot's ship. As the mothership's escape pods launched, the robots rushed to their own ship. By then, the children's ship was gone. With the robots' help, the wormhole opened. John and his companion ran for their own escape pod, but were too late. They could only kiss at the window and say a final goodbye. But then, Clever Don showed up and saved them. As debris hit the mothership, the alien ship also took off. The two huge ships flew side by side, but the alien ship was bigger and crashed into the Resolute, destroying it. The ship carrying John and the others was a second too late. The wormhole disappeared right in front of them. With the robots' help, the children's spaceship made it through the black hole and arrived at the colony planet. After everything they had been through, they found a box with June's scarf and the toy ball inside. But then, as they looked at their new home, they discovered a horrible truth. The colony planet was just a broken-down world floating in space junk. Among the wreckage was the Fortuna, a ship that had been missing for 20 years. Its captain was Judy's real father. After opening the hatch, Judy floated into what looked like a deserted spaceship. She was both excited and nervous, and that feeling grew stronger when she realized the ship was the Fortuna, the long-lost spacecraft of her biological father, Grant, which had disappeared 20 years earlier. The landing pod, however, was missing. She carefully made her way to the cockpit, turned on the control panel, and connected her communicator. She hoped the ship's radar could help her find the missing pod. Suddenly, she felt someone behind her. It was the body of an astronaut. The name tag said she was an expert on the Fortuna, but how she died was a mystery. Judy turned back to the console to look into the ship's history and find out what happened to the crew. She pulled surveillance logs showing the crew members were still in their cryosleep pods. Just then, two asteroids crashed into each other right in Jupiter's path. The impact made the Jupiter's engines fail, and the right engine stopped working completely. A collision alarm blared as one of the asteroids flew straight toward them. Penny yelled for Judy to come back, but Judy was almost done with her scan and hesitated. Seeing danger, Jupiter's autopilot took over and started a 90-second emergency landing. On the ship, Will lost his balance, and the tether connecting the Jupiter to the Fortuna snapped. When Judy saw the tether break, she scrambled to get out of the Fortuna. As everyone on the Jupiter strapped in for the landing, Judy climbed out and pushed off toward her family's ship. She was moving too fast and was about to float away into space, but at the last second, a pair of hands grabbed her. It was June, who was somehow alive. Together, they returned to Jupiter's cockpit. When Judy asked how she got there, June just said that she goes where she is needed. Jupiter then began to land. A moment later, the shadow of an alien robot appeared on the Fortuna's screen, hinting that it might be on board too. Luckily, their ship landed in a valley on an otherwise quiet planet. They had been there 349 days. In that time, Will had grown from a kid into a young man, while Judy and Penny looked about the same. They had planted crops and set up a medical bay and a classroom, making the place a real home. But there were still dangers, like meteor showers that happened often, though none had hit their valley yet. To fix the broken ship engine, they needed to collect pure titanium but it was a very slow process. A job that should have taken weeks had now stretched into a year. Will was in charge of melting the ore. Over time, the three siblings talked less and started to drift apart. It seemed, however, that their robot was also helping them with the work. Judy managed to contact the surviving crew of the Fortuna and tried to start its rocket, but after many attempts, it failed again. Meanwhile, on this new planet, Penny had started a sweet new romance, but not with her old boyfriend, Dar. On another planet, Judy's father, John, and his group were not doing as well. They were on a mission to find the main alien ship and destroy its supplies. They disguised themselves and moved through a dangerous area full of aliens. To avoid being found by the alien robots, which were drawn to electronic signals like sharks to blood, they had to turn off all their devices. During their search, a man found a box with a flashlight inside. He needed the batteries, but in his panic, he accidentally turned the light on. He fumbled to switch it off, but it was too late. The light had already attracted the robots. John had to hide and could only watch in horror as his friend was killed. Back on the spaceship, VJ there heard an alarm signaling a meteor was coming. He quickly turned on the alert system, and the children rushed to a bomb shelter under his direction. Just as the last person got inside, the meteor exploded and disappeared in the atmosphere. It was just a drill, and they felt lucky that in a whole year, no meteors had actually hit them. However, Dar's calculations showed that collisions in space were happening more often, and the danger to their valley was growing. He predicted a meteor could hit them in about 4 or 5 days. Judy asked her brother Will how long it would take to fix the engine. Will told her that if they had enough pure titanium, the repair would only take 4 hours. They called an emergency meeting. Using sensors, they found a large amount of pure titanium ore on the face of a cliff 3,000 meters high. The robots were too heavy to climb the fragile rocks, which meant the humans had to do it themselves. For those with no no climbing experience, it was a scary thought, but they had no other choice. They packed their gear and began the long climb up. The group of kids found the climb up the steep cliffs difficult. With Judy in the lead, Will saw a small bug come out of a crack in the rock, which Penny thought was cute. Her new boyfriend seemed to think her reaction was a little strange, but Thar looked at her with a fond expression, hinting that things were complicated between the three of them. They needed to reach their spot by nightfall, so they kept going. From down below, their robot watched them, looking as if it felt guilty about something. Back at camp, June had a feeling the robot was hiding something. When it got dark, they set up their tents on a narrow cliff ledge, which made for a cold and nervous night. The next day, they started climbing again. The air was thin at that altitude, so they had to put on their spacesuits. Penny's boyfriend helped her get safely onto a platform. When he turned to help Dar's pride got in the way, and he refused the help, causing him to fall. Judy rushed downstairs and found Dar had broken his wrist. The other boy had to take him back to camp, leaving only 3 people to mine the ore. Luckily, there was a lot. While on the cliff, Will accidentally kicked a loose rock into a strong upward wind and watched in surprise as it flew up into the sky. That night, as they set up their tents, they talked about their mission to find the Fortuna's survivors. Suddenly, swarms of bugs came out from under their tent. The bugs ate the rock and the tent supports collapsed. Not wanting to leave the ore they had mined, Judy and the others backed away to the cliff platform. That's when Will came up with a clever plan using the upward wind. He tore a piece of fabric from the tent, threw it into the air, and watched it float up. After a quick test, he said the idea would work. The 3 of them used the tent to make simple gliding suits, held hands, and jumped off the cliff together. Holding hands, the 3 kids rode the updrafts in the gorge, floating safely upward just as the rock pillar they had been standing on fell apart. They drifted slowly and landed safely on the platform. To help Judy search for the Fortuna survivors and her biological father, Penny gave her a signal receiver. Judy then continued her climb alone, while Will and Penny started to head back down to camp with the titanium. When Will returned to the workshop, June confronted him. She had noticed that a lot of the pure titanium was gone and accused him of stealing it. Will didn't give her an explanation, but he admitted to taking it and asked her to keep it a secret. Later, he went to his pet robot, knowing it was the one who really took the ore. The robot confessed, saying it did it to protect him because it thought their current location was the safest place to be. But Will, feeling he wasn't a child anymore, wanted to face the dangers himself and asked the robot to trust him. Judy had just reached the top of the mountain when she turned on her signal receiver. She was shocked when it picked up a signal. Not far away, the robot noticed a meteorite falling. It seemed to sense something and was drawn to a cave the impact had created. When it came out of the cave, it was met with the sight of amazing ruins. Meanwhile, John and his team had gathered supplies and returned to their base, which was a group of connected spacecraft. They stayed near a specific star whose heat created an interference that was perfect for hiding them from alien robot scans. They had a meeting to plan how to get an alien engine and capture an alien robot to run it, which they needed to find their children. John pointed out that while the alien robots weren't aggressive, they weren't friendly either. Trying to take an engine that belonged to them would almost certainly make them attack. Still, a year later, parents were desperate to see their children again. Back at the spaceship, Don was now part of the management team. He was still alive, and so was his pet chicken, which had since had many more chickens. Standing in front of a cage, Don talked to his pet. A coworker saw him joking and asked if he could choose the original. Don confidently said he could. Everyone was busy with ship repairs, and Maureen had joined in to help. In their private room, John and Maureen were sad, missing their 3 children deeply and wondering how they were doing, and if they would ever see them again. At the top of the mountain, Judy found a landing pod from the missing Fortuna. She quickly opened the hatch and went inside, where she found several cryopods. Walking to the one at the very back, she wiped the frost off the glass and saw her biological father, Grant, whom she had never met. She started the process to wake him up, but a warning came on about a problem with the system. The pod door opened strangely, and she rushed to help him. After a frantic but failed search for a defibrillator, she tried to use another cable, but it was too short. She managed to pull a cable from another system, power it up, and successfully brought her father back to life. When Grant woke up, he asked who she was. Judy lied and said she was just another astronaut. As Grant's body started to recover, they talked about the planet, Judy's role as captain, and the alien robots. They decided to use a 20-year-old armored vehicle to move all the cryopods. After loading them up, they put on their helmets, and the old vehicle started up with a roar. But their luck ran out as meteors began to fall. As the vehicle swerved, a cryopod almost fell off. Judy crawled to the back to used the crane to secure it. Suddenly, a meteor hit the ground right in front of them. Grant swerved hard, which almost threw Judy out, but his skilled driving threw her back inside. Just then, a huge meteor hit behind them. Judy quickly secured the cryopods with the crane as a wall of dust from the impact rushed toward them. She got back in the passenger seat, and with a brave leap, they drove the vehicle into a large crater. The dust cloud surrounded them, but it wasn't as strong anymore, and they managed to escape the disaster. Right away, they faced another problem, a 1,000-meter cliff they had to get down to reach their camp. Grant was doubtful and asked how they would get down. Judy confidently told him not to worry, that there's always a way to solve problems, something her mother used to say. Grant said he once knew a woman who said the same thing. They were both talking about Maureen. In that moment, Judy found the courage to tell him she was his biological daughter from his relationship with Maureen. After over 20 years, father and daughter were finally together again. The spaceship was flying through a planet full of storms, caught between thunder and strong sandstorms. This was the empty world where the three of them had been sent to get the alien robot their commander had destroyed. To make sure the robot would be cooperative when they turned it back on, Maureen brought an electromagnetic device. They went out in an armored vehicle, with John and Don searching while Maureen provided backup. As the spaceship door opened, the two men entered the storm. It wasn't long before Don got lost because of a signal problem, and both Maureen and John lost contact with him. Just then, Maureen saw a light. It was John, who had disappeared for a moment. With Maureen's guidance, they found the cloth that had once covered the robot, but the robot itself was gone. Their search was a failure, and they had to go back. Elsewhere, Penny and her new boyfriend were having a deep conversation. When Penny touched a nearby stone, her hair stood on end from static electricity. She thought it might be a sign of hidden alien technology. She rushed back to get Will, and when they returned and touched the wall together, they felt the same thing. June had followed them and was standing guard outside as Will, and Penny found a cave that led to a secret world. Inside, Will found a footprint that looked like the robot's. Penny sensed danger and said they should leave, but she accidentally touched a switch that locked the door. Outside, the sound startled June. As Will and Penny held each other, feeling hopeless, they heard a metal knocking sound. They grew more afraid until the door suddenly opened. It was June who had come to rescue them. Just then, another door opened, and the robot that had been missing for 2 days appeared. The robot led Will to the magnificent ruins, confirming that this was where the alien robots were made, though their creators were long gone. The robot guided the group into a room that looked like the cockpit of an alien spaceship. The robot turned on a machine that showed a map of the universe, focusing on the dangerous planet they were on. As the robot zoomed in, they saw the Jupiter spacecraft over the desert planet, marked with a red light. The robot then gave a danger warning. Meanwhile, John and his group had just gotten back to their ship when Don found signs that the alien robot was on board. John climbed up to look and saw a nearby hatch trying to open, with a red light shining from outside. They got ready to capture the enemy on their ship. Their target had walked right into their trap, and catching it could be the key to finding their children. After searching for so long with no luck, success finally seemed close. As the robot approached, they coordinated their plan. Don connected the wires while Maureen led the robot into the hall. Maureen hit the door switches, trapping it. Don turned on the power, and John moved forward with the magnetic device just as the robot was about to attack Maureen. At the same time, the robot with Will turned on its own communication device, which glowed blue. Maureen's robot did the same, and suddenly, Maureen's voice came out of it, shocking Will's group. Just as John was about to zap the robot, Maureen recognized it as Scarecrow, their friendly alien, and yelled for him to stop. With the hatch open, Scarecrow was freed. It was Will's robot, which he had sent to help them. Through the two robots, the family shared how much they missed each other, even using the machines to hug each other. Will explained that their spaceship had gone off course and never made it to the colony planet, but they would have the engine fixed soon and could head there. Maureen then told them that the robot their commander had destroyed was actually still alive. Although their communication was cut off, they were relieved to know their children were safe and had been okay for the past year. Now that they had the robots, all they needed was an alien engine to make their next move. They decided they would steal one. The destroyed robot was found by a silver robot, which took a chip-like part from it and put it into a new body, an upgraded model. A group of robots then set out to avenge what had happened to Will. Will, meanwhile, had found an alien relic. The bones in front of him were clearly alien, which made him think that maybe aliens, like humans, create things that look like them. When Will stood up, he saw a bridge crossing a deep canyon. He shot a flare, and to his surprise, the canyon below was filled with countless alien skeletons. Curious, Will kept exploring until he found a control panel with what looked like alien handprints. He put his hand on it, but nothing happened. He thought it might be a fingerprint lock and decided to try using the hand from an alien skeleton. When he pressed the alien hand on the panel, it lit up and each button made a different sound. He couldn't understand what they meant, but he felt they were important and recorded them. As he pressed pressed the buttons, the giant cave began to move. Back at the camp, Judy and the others were making the final preparations to launch the spaceship and leave the planet. They realized Will wasn't back yet and tried to call him on his communicator, but all they heard were strange noises, and he didn't answer. Worried, Judy decided to find him. June insisted on going with her, glancing at a toolbox as they left. They got to the cave, where June became very upset. She was terrified of being turned over to the police when they got back to the colony. The spaceship only had enough oxygen for all the children and one adult. With 2 adults now present, the less experienced June would have to go into a cryo chamber. Judy promised she would be let out as soon as they arrived, but June didn't trust her and couldn't find the comfort she needed. She was about to grab a crowbar, but a noise made her stop. June put the tool down. It seemed like she wasn't really going to hurt anyone after all. Back to Will. A finger broke off the skeleton hand he was using. He quickly grabbed it, pushed it against the panel with his own hand, and pressed the last button. Right then, the whole cave started to fall apart. A huge crack opened up in the floor, but he managed to jump over it. Judy and the others showed up just in the nick of time as a heavy stone door was sliding shut. June shoved the crowbar in the gap, holding it open just long enough for Will to squeeze through. He reached back to grab his camera and almost got his arm crushed as the door slammed shut. They were all really lucky June was thinking so fast with that crowbar. After they got back to the ship, they started getting ready to leave. June showed them Will's recorder. She said she'd use it as a bargaining chip to make sure they'd let her go when they got to the colony. Will gave her his word that he'd free her. He told her he needed her help to create a distraction while he and the robot made their own escape. They agreed, and June got into her cryopod. With everyone in their places, the ship took off successfully. The kids, who had called this planet home for a year, were finally leaving. Before they took off, Grant told Judy he was going to fly the ship himself because he didn't trust computers. He blamed the ship's computer for getting him stuck in a cryopod for 20 years. He bragged that he was picked for the Fortuna mission not for his sleep schedule, but because he was a pro at flying through dangerous asteroid fields. Everyone buckled up, and the ship lifted off with Grant at the controls, heading straight into a dense field of asteroids. He was an amazing pilot, weaving through the space rocks, even if he scraped a few of them along the way. Just as Grant yelled that they were almost out of the asteroid belt, the ship's computer warned that they were off course. Judy told him they should listen to the computer, but Grant was stubborn and kept flying manually. But now, his flying was getting sloppy, and he was hitting more and more asteroids. Seeing this, Judy unbuckled her seatbelt and restarted the autopilot, a system her mom, Maureen, had designed. She decided to trust her mom's work and let the computer take over. Once the computer was in control, the ship straightened out, only to fly straight toward a giant planet. It was too late to turn, and a crash seemed certain. Then, at the last second, 2 meteorites crashed into the planet, blowing a huge hole in it. The spaceship flew right through the opening, completely unharmed. Grant was so impressed with Judy's quick thinking and how well the system worked that he made her the new captain. Meanwhile, on another planet, Maureen and the others were following Scarecrow. Their plan was to steal an engine from the alien robots. Through a telescope, they saw 12 alien robots picking up parts from their fallen friends. Scarecrow picked up 2 stones, his way of saying he could take on 2 of them, leaving the rest for the humans. They went back to their ship and stripped down their armored vehicle, taking off everything they didn't need to make it super fast. While Scarecrow was inside the ship, John saw him doing something weird. After Scarecrow left, John and Maureen went to check it out. They found out he'd been looking at the commander's old files. It looked like Scarecrow was trying to get his lost memories back, but it didn't make John trust him anymore. Just in case, John gave Maureen an electromagnetic device to take with her when she went with Scarecrow. When Maureen and Scarecrow got to the spot, she decided to just confront him and turned on the device. But she found out it was broken. Scarecrow must have messed with it earlier. It seemed like after everything he'd been through, Scarecrow couldn't fully trust humans either. At the same time, 2 guys started the armored vehicle and blasted music, which got the attention of a bunch of alien robots. They had even thrown out the vehicle's cooling system to make it lighter, so Don had to pour coolant on the engine by hand. The robots chased them, shooting like crazy, but the vehicle just barely got away. Seeing the robots were busy, Scarecrow jumped down and ran to the alien spaceship. He took a quick look around and went inside. Maureen waited and waited, but he didn't come out. She got impatient and started climbing down to check on him. By now, John had used the last of the coolant, and their vehicle was about to die. Inside the alien ship, lights flickered and parts fell out right before Scarecrow finally appeared, holding the alien engine. Maureen was so happy to see him, she started to run over. But as their vehicle slowed down, the alien robots didn't get closer like they expected. They couldn't get a signal from Maureen, and when they finally stopped, John realized they'd been tricked. Just as Maureen was about to shoot a flare, multiple robots emerging from the ground caught her attention. Robots popped out of the ground and grabbed him easily. From afar, Maureen watched the new, updated robot use a sharp tool to dig through Scarecrow's memories. Then, the alien spaceship took off with Scarecrow on board. When John and the others got back, they demanded to know what happened. Maureen explained that the updated robot took Scarecrow, but he hadn't betrayed them. He was just trying to get them home and was their last hope. The updated robot was squeezing Scarecrow's head, and it looked like he was in his final moments. Scarecrow slowly stretched out his arms, and weirdly, Will's robot did the exact same thing. A little map of the planet appeared. Incredibly, Scarecrow was controlling Will's robot from far away. As the map zoomed in, they all saw it, their dad's hideout, the circle of connected spaceships. As Will's robot moved a little, they could see an alien ship nearby. In that instant, Scarecrow's neck was snapped. Will's robot's neck snapped in the same way. The light in Scarecrow's face went out. He was gone. Will's robot lowered its head, looking like it was heartbroken. Will asked if it was because the Scarecrow was gone. The robot just stared blankly at a sad Will, then turned and walked away. Back at camp, John and the others told everyone that Scarecrow had been captured. What was worse, the updated robot now knew where they were because it had gone through Scarecrow's memories. The only good news was that the enemy didn't know where the kids were, or the alien ship would already be on its way. Maureen calculated that the alien ship would get to them in half an hour, and they were completely stuck. They accepted that they probably weren't going to make it, so they decided to do everything they could to protect the kids and the colony. They started destroying any information on their ship about the colony's location to keep it from the robots. Their next plan was to find the kids, who were heading to the colony. Everyone started burning and shredding everything. Meanwhile, Judy was set on getting the kids to the colony. But the kids wanted to save their parents and voted to go back for them. Will went to his room and decided it was time to act on his plan. He took out a camera and recorded a final message. Back with John's group, everyone was preparing for the alien ship to show up. They watched it get closer, ready for the end. But then, their radar showed a black hole opening nearby, and a spaceship came out. It was the Jupiter. The kids were coming to save them. As soon as the updated robot saw this, it changed course and went after them. John quickly ordered their ship to launch to save the kids, but a voice came over the radio telling them to stay put. It was Judy, flying the Fortuna, the ship that had been missing for 20 years. The kids from the Jupiter were all on board. When the Fortuna docked, they were finally back with their kids after a whole year. They explained that the Jupiter was just a decoy flying on autopilot. When Will stepped out, his family was finally together again. They decided to use the decoy as a distraction, opening the black hole to travel to the colony planet. Maureen also saw Grant, her old flame, for the first time in 20 years, but there was no time for a reunion. As everyone was getting ready to go, Will paused June's cryopod. He got on the Fortuna and told the robot his plan. After everyone was gone, the robot would close the black hole. They would stay behind. Will's plan was to get everyone to the colony safely, then take the alien engine and the robot to keep the colony safe for good. In the end, it would just be him and the robot left to finish the fight. Meanwhile, the updated robot caught up to the Jupiter and realized it had been tricked. The robots opened their own black hole. At that moment, Will quickly unfroze June, and their plan started. A bunch of spaceships flew toward the black hole, with June creating a diversion. Will slipped away and was about to get on the Fortuna when a whole fleet of alien ships arrived. The audio he recorded earlier came in handy. An explosion sent Will flying, but his dad grabbed him. His plan had failed, and he had no choice but to sit down. John started the ship, and it flew into the black hole along with the Fortuna, but the alien ships were right behind them. They couldn't go to the colony planet anymore. John told the robots to take them to any random planet. The robots swiped the controls, and everything started spinning. When they came out of the black hole, the Fortuna and the alien ships all lost power and started falling. They decided to launch the escape pods. As each pod shot out, Maureen and Judy found out theirs were jammed. Suddenly, a giant creature started eating the spaceship. You could only see its head, so you can imagine how huge it must have been. The two women were trapped inside. Their biggest problem was that the thruster on Maureen's seat was still on. The system was cracked, so she was basically sitting on a bomb that would explode if she moved. The people who got out in pods survived, but were scattered everywhere. Penny and John landed together. They threw away their communicators so the alien robots couldn't track them. Will landed with June, but his recorder was broken and fell. Just then, Will saw the alien robots had also survived and were climbing out of their ship. Don got pretty lucky. He ended up with his chicken, but the chicken liked to wander off. While looking for his pet, he felt a chill down his spine. He turned and saw the silver robot walking towards him. He was too scared to move, but the robot just scanned him and didn't attack. Feeling a little braver, he pulled out a knife and struck a cool pose for about 3 seconds seconds before the robot swatted him away like a fly. John found the Fortuna. Luckily, the crash had killed its power, so the alien robots couldn't find it. They found Will's robot there, but it was pinned under something. John ran to find tools to free it, and Penny said it was just like when Will first met the robot. She asked the robot how Will had saved it back then. The robot pointed to the rope saw in her pack. But a new problem was headed their way. An alien worm was crawling along a power line. The power suddenly came back on, and the whole Fortuna lit up. In the distance, the silver robots seemed to notice and started walking toward them. John and Penny rushed to cut the power. John found the wires and started pulling them like crazy. Just then, Penny saw a video playing on a control screen. It showed an alien robot, which meant one had already been on the Fortuna. Before she could get a good look, John ripped the wires out and took the hard drive, planning to watch it later. They had to save Will's robot first. John guessed they had about 10 or 15 minutes before the alien robots got there. After sawing like mad, the robot was finally free, just as the alien robots showed up. Elsewhere, the giant creature kept eating the Jupiter. Maureen told Judy to release the ship's air pressure to hopefully annoy the creature's throat and make it spit them out. Judy didn't have much experience, so it didn't work. The creature had swallowed half the ship by then. Maureen told Judy to get out through the back, but Judy refused to leave her mom. She thought of another plan. She mixed some chemicals to make the creature sick and made a makeshift needle. But the creature's skin was too tough, and with her hurt shoulder, that plan failed too. Maureen begged Judy to escape through the airlock. Judy said if her mom wasn't leaving her, she wasn't leaving her mother. Judy found the box Don had used to save Penny before. She used liquid nitrogen to freeze the device under Maureen's seat, which would delay the explosion by just a few seconds. It was just enough time for Maureen to get into the box. As soon as they were safe, the seat exploded. The blast really bothered the giant creature, and it threw up the ship. They had made it. As for Will, he was balancing on a tree branch over a cliff, trying to get his backpack. Just as he was about to grab it, he slipped and fell, but a robot caught him. They were back together. At the same time, the silver robot found the updated robot, and its red light seemed to be flashing some kind of information. In another ship, two women were cleaning when they heard a metallic banging sound. They grabbed tools and went to check it out, only to see a hatch being cut open. When the hatch flew off, they saw it was just John and the others, a false alarm. They were startled but glad everyone was safe. They needed to fix the ship fast and get out of there. John and Will went to check out the area. Through a telescope, they saw Don walking over with his chicken. The silver robot had just found the spot where Will had dropped something. As Maureen was fixing the ship, John showed her the video from the hard drive. It showed an alien robot scanning a cryopod with Grant inside. The recording was from 5 years ago, around when the alien ship crashed on Earth. Don came back and told them about being scanned by the robots. Maureen figured that maybe the alien ship crashed because it had finished scanning Grant. A scan like that could show a person's whole life, which meant the robots could now use that info to find the colony planet, since Don had been there before. Knowing this, Will decided to take care of it himself. He grabbed his backpack, took the card from his broken recorder, and put it in a new one. He started a vehicle, but a robot blocked his way. Will told the robot to stay and protect his family, saying he could handle it alone. The robot went back to the ship, looking worried. Meanwhile, June went into Will's room and watched his recording, thinking about how brave he was. To get the updated robot to find him faster, Will turned on his vehicle's lights and music while he searched for it. And it worked. The robot was drawn right to him. Meanwhile, John and the others were desperately trying to get ready for takeoff, trying to figure out how to trap the updated robot and stop it from reaching the colony. John had a thought. If the robot scanned Don an hour ago and knew where the colony was, why hadn't it left yet? He suggested that maybe the colony wasn't what it was after. Maybe it was after Will. Maureen went to find Will. When she got to his room, June told her she was too late. Will had already gone to face the updated robot. June gave Maureen a camera with a message from him. After watching the video, Maureen yelled for everyone to start the ship and find Will. Meanwhile, Will's pet robot was thinking about the past, remembering when the silver robot caught it and kept asking how Will had changed its programming. By then, Will was face to face with the updated robot. It had just pulled out its claws when Will's recorder shut it down. As its two other robots walked away, Will carefully got closer. He had figured out what the new robot wanted, to understand what happened between him and his robot in the fire, because that was the moment his robot changed. Will thought the change was for the better and asked the new robot if it understood the idea of programming. The robot touched its own chest like it understood. Will then took out the skull of the alien species that made the robots. He explained that the species died out and no one knew what they originally programmed the robots to do. None of that mattered now, he said, because their creators were gone and the robots were free to choose their own purpose. Will asked if the robot was sad that its creators were gone. The robot said no, and then revealed that it was the one that killed them. At that moment, Will's pet robot sensed he was in danger. The updated robot was closing in. Will asked why it killed the aliens. The robot said it was to get rid of its masters. Just as Will was about to play the recording again, the robot threw him across the ground. At that exact moment, his family showed up to save him. The hatch opened, and his robot and everyone else ran out. The updated robot got closer to Will and said it refused to be programmed. Will said he never tried to program it. His pet robot saw them. The updated robot looked at Will's robot and said, "You are free now." Without any warning, a long spike shot out of the updated robot's hand and went right through Will's heart. The pet robot's face immediately turned red as it went into a rage. Everyone rushed over to Will. Blinded by fury, the pet robot quickly destroyed the two other enemy robots. They carried Will back to the spaceship. Even though his heart was badly wounded, he still had a faint heartbeat and was barely hanging on. John, however, was furious. He stormed outside and yelled at their robot for letting Will face the updated robot alone. He screamed that he had trusted the robot to keep Will safe. John let out all his frustration on the robot, which looked incredibly sad before it turned and walked away. Now, back on the spaceship, the medical room wasn't good enough for the kind of heart surgery Will needed. Their only chance was to get him to a real hospital, and the only place with one was the colony planet. This was a chance not only to save Will's life, but also to warn the people on the colony about the coming robot attack. Luckily, the ship had a cryo chamber. By putting Will inside, they could slow down his body and take the pressure off his failing heart. June went up to the robot and told it that this was no time to feel bad about what happened. The most important thing now was to get to the colony and save Will. They got the robot on board, started the engines, and the ship took off without any problems. The alien ship also took off and opened its own black hole. Both ships flew into the rips in space. A spaceship came out of a black hole and saw a beautiful, Earth-like planet right in front of it. A quick scan showed no sign of the alien ship. They headed toward the green planet, flew through the clouds, and saw a beautiful world below. The spaceship landed right in front of a hospital. At this point, June started to worry again about being arrested. Judy tried to comfort her, saying that she should just let things happen, since everyone has to face the consequences of their actions eventually. With the alien threat and Will's life on the line, June's personal problems didn't seem so big anymore. The robot stayed on the ship as Will was rushed into surgery. June went to a hospital room, the same one where she had poisoned the captain with seaweed. A screen said he would wake up in 22 hours. She gave him a quick look before heading back to the armored vehicle, looking very tense. John told the Prime Minister of the colony about the coming alien attack. They used to think that reaching the colony meant they would finally be safe, but now they were facing an even bigger threat. They realized that they had been so focused on keeping the power on that they had completely forgotten to build any kind of defense system. Later, at the colony's command center, Maureen noticed something weird in the data. Some of the colony's energy was missing. This gave John an idea. They went to the colony's prison to talk to a doctor who was locked up. They explained the dangerous situation to him, and he admitted that they had secretly built an electromagnetic field to defend against unknown threats. To get the password for the defense system, they had to get him released and clear his name with the Prime Minister. He was the only one who knew the password now because the others who knew it had been killed. When a broadcast announced that the doctor was being released, the robot on the ship sensed danger and immediately sent out a warning. John took the doctor to get the password. Just then, John thought he saw a red light moving outside. It was the enemy robot. He immediately went to check it out while the doctor started looking for the password. John carefully searched the nearby woods but found nothing. He then heard a noise from behind and hurried back. When he got back, he found the guards were dead. Inside the room, the doctor was also dead, holding a note with a few simple words on it. Soon after, the whole colony got a danger alert about hostile robots, telling everyone to stay away from them and call for help. John suspected that their own pet robot had killed the doctor. He gave the note to Maureen and told her to figure it out, saying it was the final clue to the defense system's password. John then took the armored vehicle to hunt down the enemy robot, which had disappeared. Penny and Judy were worried that their pet robot might have gone bad and committed the murder. They knew they had to find it before anyone else did, because it would probably fight back if it was cornered. Their main goal was to find it before their dad did, so they started by asking Don for help. When they found Don, he at first refused, saying he couldn't get involved in anything illegal. Penny warned him that if anyone found out he knew their plan and did nothing, he'd be in big trouble. Feeling pressured, Don had no choice but to help. As they were talking about where to hide the robot, a sound from the ship's cabin told them someone had been listening. To their surprise, Thar came out, turning their group of 3 into 4. He nervously told Penny that John would kill him if he found out. Meanwhile, John and the commander were also tracking the robot. Their detector beeped, beep, showing a red dot at a dam. At the same time, Penny's group saw the robot starting a red laser scan near the dam and wondered what it was doing. They had to get to the robot first. Don's skills were a huge help. He drove the vehicle like a pro, and they continued on foot, getting closer to the dam. When they got there, they saw the dam's gate had been opened. It was the pet robot's doing. It had used a laser to break it. Don and his group reached the dam, which was also where he hid his smuggled whiskey. He used a password to open a gate, and they took an elevator up to check things out. The elevator, however, broke down and got stuck. When they finally got out, they saw marks on an outer gate that looked like they were from an alien robot. Listening closely, they realized there was more than one robot. Judy tried to call her dad, but the thick walls blocked the signal. They decided to keep looking around. Back at the colony, Will had woken up from surgery with a new mechanical heart. Maureen was at the command center trying to figure out the note. Grant pulled her aside to tell her a secret. The Fortuna's real mission wasn't to explore, but to investigate a black hole that an alien engine had created. The government had coded all messages with the Fortuna using words as keys to keep people from panicking. The note Maureen was holding was probably the password. After that, they found the commander's widow, who showed them a video of him. By listening to the words he said in the video, they successfully turned on the defense system. As they spoke the password phrases, an electromagnetic shield started to form in the sky. At the dam, Judy's group found alien robots messing with the turbine engines. They were trying to cut off the power so an alien spaceship could land. Don came up with a plan to destroy one of the turbines, which would cause an explosion and get rid of the enemy robots, leaving the other two turbines to power the colony. Judy said this was a family matter and Don was now family, so she volunteered to do the dangerous part of diving into the water. As she got close to the pool, an enemy robot came out of the water and walked toward her with its claws out. Suddenly, the pet robot appeared, and John was right behind it. He pulled Judy to safety. The pet robot stood alone, facing all the enemy robots, cleverly smashed a water tank, and the water washed the enemy robots away. It turned out that another robot had killed the doctor, trying to frame Will's robot and cause trouble. The pet robot had stopped the enemy and saved them all. John stepped forward and asked if these were the only enemy robots here, and the pet robot confirmed it. After that, they all went back to camp. On the way, they told Penny how he really felt. He said she was more special than she knew and shouldn't feel insecure or think she needed to be with some powerful hero, because she was a hero herself. Meanwhile, June was still nervous in the armored vehicle by the lake. A message on her communicator told her the alert was over. She glanced at a medicine box next to her, took out a syringe, and looked like she was planning something. Back in the command center, they discovered two turbine engines were overheating. Maureen said that if they had to, they would cut power to the whole colony to make sure the shield stayed up. Suddenly, the entire colony went dark. Will sensed something was wrong. The command center picked up a huge energy spike in the atmosphere, and then countless UFOs appeared. The enemy robots were back. Just a few moments earlier, the colony's turbines had been destroyed. Now, with no power, the defense systems were useless. Maureen came up with a plan. She would get all the Jupiter ships to give their power to the defense system and turn the shield back on. She put the plan into action right away, and the Jupiter ships gathered, connecting with cables. Meanwhile, June showed up at the hospital with the syringe. Will's pet robot saw her as she looked at an unconscious officer, thinking about what to do. In the command center, Maureen got a call from June, who asked if they could survive. Maureen promised her they would. Convinced, June went into the officer's room, planning to sacrifice him to clear her name and take his identity. Just as she was about to inject him, the pet robot appeared, said it could help her, and reached for the syringe. By this time, all the children had been evacuated in armored vehicles. Will was with them. As each ship connected, the shield successfully turned back on. The alien spaceship, however, didn't slow down. It was going to smash through the shield before it could fully close. At the exact moment the shield was about to seal, the alien ship crashed into it, scattering pieces inside the barrier. In the command center, everyone lost control of the colony's systems as the loud screech of the alien ship filled the air. The enemy robots had successfully invaded, and their debris landed right in the path of the children's convoy. The children quickly got out of their vehicles. Will noticed the enemy robots were looking for something, the alien engine. He then remembered why the alien species was destroyed by its own creations. The engine could not only travel between star systems, but also had enough energy to destroy an entire planet if it exploded. Realizing this, Will desperately tried to warn everyone to stay away from the engine, but no one listened. Determined, he pulled out his foredrip and, even though he was weak, stepped out of the vehicle. Penny, who had just run out, realized Will was still inside and turned back. Will explained the situation to her. She wanted to get her sister, Judy, but there wasn't enough time. It was up to her now. Will told her she could do it, and Penny ran off. Among the burning wreckage, Penny found the alien engine. As she was about to grab it, a noise behind her made her jump. It was Judy. With Judy's help, they moved the engine. Penny was then startled to see the updated robot trapped nearby, its face dimly lit and looking dead. Feeling sorry for it, Penny crouched down and found the other half of its body. She decided to save it. Once she put it back together, the robot turned back on and began to change. It extended its claws but didn't attack. Instead, it transformed into a more human-like robot form. At that moment, the other children arrived and were amazed by the change. Penny told everyone that if they fixed the other broken robots, they would become their friends. Inspired, the group got to work. As Judy stepped out of the wreckage, an enemy robot saw her. She picked up a stone to defend herself. The robot flashed its claws but then pulled them back. Penny's reinforcements had arrived, and each person now had a friendly robot with them. Seeing this, Will was amazed, realizing these new allies could change the course of the battle. Elsewhere, Thor found Penny and told her he loved her. The two were finally together. Just then, Penny's robot gave a warning. A large group of enemy robots was coming. Penny's robots faced them, and a massive battle began. Meanwhile, a Jupiter ship landed in front of Will, and his pet robot helped him on board. To his surprise, June was flying it. Will called Penny and Judy to come help, but the area was full of enemies. The Jupiter was at risk of being shot down, so Will came up with a new plan. He understood that all robots could change their programming and set out to find others to end the war. Their ship flew through a black hole to a robot charging station on another planet. Will's experiences were shown on the walls for the other robots, but they didn't understand and left. At the same time, Will's mechanical heart began to fail. In a mysterious moment, as a storm started, the pet robot placed him in a hollow, covered his heart with its hand, and turned its body into a shield. As lightning struck, the robot slowly turned to ash. When Will woke up, the pet robot was gone, but he felt like it was still with him. June took him back to the ship as enemy robots watched from high up. Back on the ship, Will discovered his heart now had pieces of the pet robot inside it. Suddenly, they heard a command-like sound from the enemy robots. Rushing outside, they saw a large group of them approaching. On another front, the battle between the human-like robots was almost over, and their side was losing. John and the others grabbed the alien engine and ran from the fight, returning to the Jupiter ships. Meanwhile, Don was setting up a last-ditch defense, connecting the ships to a reverse current to create an electric field. As the power flowed, enemy robots above were struck down. The remaining robots, however, kept coming. Once the Jupiter's fuel ran out, the electric field would disappear. Time was running out. The enemy robots outside, carrying their fallen friends, tested the field, waiting for it to fail. As the last of the fuel was used up, the ships lost power. Grant led the children onto a war vehicle to escape, while John and Maureen used their vehicle to lure the enemy robots away with the alien engine. The robots chased John's vehicle, which was soon flipped over. Maureen crawled out and used a pipe to spray liquid nitrogen, shattering the frozen robots. However, the next robot wasn't completely frozen and didn't break, even when John hit it, sending himself flying. The enemy robot walked toward the engine and turned it on. At that moment, Will returned in his spaceship. The robots saw him and their claws flashed, but Will started playing a recording, and the enemy robots immediately backed away. It was the command sound of the alien creators, which Will had recorded on the other planet. The others received and played the recording. Surrounded by the sound, the enemy robots fell to their knees. Will ordered the engine to be shut down, but the enemy robot stubbornly refused, choosing to go down fighting. Seeing this, Will did something no one expected. He turned off the recording. The enemy robot's hand stabbed into Will's heart, but Will wasn't afraid. He trusted his pet robot. A blue light traveled from the enemy robot's hand back into its own body. Slowly, the enemy robot transformed, changing back into the human-like form of Will's pet robot. It turned out the pet robot had known the attack on Will's heart was coming, and had transferred its mind there. The pet robot then shut down the alien engine, and at last, the danger was over. Soon after, with the help of the robots, they built a new spaceship. Most of the old enemy robots had broken free from their programming and chose to decide their own purpose, with many leaving the planet. Judy officially became a doctor. June found the officer and chose to turn herself in, and she was sent to prison. Maureen visited her, saying she hoped June would join their family when she was released. Will then began a journey exploring the cosmos, with his ever-faithful pet robot by his side. Together, they discovered a beautiful new planet. And with that, the final season and the entire story comes to an end. And that's where season 3 ends. Hope you guys liked it. If you did, please like and subscribe to the channel.